Appreciate you guys joining in. Appreciate you guys listening. We're back for another space. Do retweet, reshare the space. Let everybody know we're live. Let's try and get as many people in here as possible. Oh my god, the Zaya space decided to start at the same time as us. That's hilarious. You guys are flipping fraud. Okay. Retweet the space, reshare the space, guys. Anyone who quote tweets the space, we will retweet their quote tweets. Let's try and get as many people in here as possible. Yeah, we're live on YouTube as well. I'll put the link out in a bit once we've got everything set up. But yeah, we're live on YouTube. We're live on X. We are live to give you the real news, real information. There's a lot of Zionist propaganda everywhere, and you got to get the real news. So yeah, do retweet the space, guys, and reshare it. Okay. Okay, and then everyone who quote tweets the space, I will retweet their quote tweets. Let's go to Beatrix. Beatrix, you got some news for us?
I have got some news. Good afternoon, good evening, Suleiman. Just before I give the news, guys, Suleiman, I think you've got a hot mic. What I'm doing, guys, is I'm taking the link and I'm sending it out in DMs to people that I think would enjoy listening to this space. And then I'm going to retweet it because I haven't had a chance to do that. So I'll ask everyone to do the same, please, if you can. Take the link of the space, and you can do that where you see the purple pill on the bottom right hand side. Just next to that, just to the left of that, is a half a triangle with 3 little circles. Click on that and you've got 4 options. Press copy link, and once you've copied that link, you can send it out in your group chats, in your DM groups, send it to people that you know. That's what I'm doing right now, so just bear with me 1 second. Almost done with mine. The other thing I was going to ask is if you can please share it on your profile. So I'll give you a second to do that, and then we can go through the profile and how we can do that. Let me just complete sending it to a couple of people here. Okay, I think I've sent it to all the usual suspects I would normally send it to. Although, yeah, let me check. Yeah, we're good. Okay. And so then, guys, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share it on my profile. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to press that same triangle, which is to the left of the purple pill, just to the left of the purple pill. And there's a little half a triangle with 3 little circles. Press that, press share via post. And then I'm just going to put a message on saying space is live with updates. You can put whatever message you want on that, and make sure you put a space after your message, and then tweet it out. And then once you've tweeted it out and it's gone out, you can press the 3 little dots on the top right hand side and pin it to your profile. If you pin it to your profile, all your followers will see that you're in this space and you're listening to it, and that you're here. So it's the 3 little dots on the top right hand side once it's gone. So I'm just waiting. Mine's just been posted there. So I press the 3 little dots on the top right hand side and pin it to my profile. Also, guys, on the bottom right where it says 24, that purple pearl, if you click that purple pearl and go to that post, you'll see a post, quote tweet from there. So please do me a favor, everybody here, quote tweet from there. Press the middle and then press quote tweet. Press that middle circular kind of symbol and press quote tweet. And Suleiman will retweet every quote tweet. Okay, so we really appreciate that. We don't ask for a lot when we do these spaces, but we just ask for support to make sure the news is getting out there. And it's really important. If you'll have been listening over the last day or two, this space has become even more critical because we have to keep the news going out there, the real news, the real analysis, the truth. You know, what Iran is doing, what its position is, how Israel is doing, what its true position is, and what America's doing in this, and how the GCC countries fit in. Because if you listen to New York Post or Washington or these other Zio spaces or these big Zio profiles, what they will tell you is that The ground invasion's a good thing. Iran has to lose this. They're full of mullahs. I've seen some of these posts already. They're jihadis. It's the same narrative from 30 years ago. And this is what's going to be whipped up into a frenzy, especially if ground troops go in. So really important that we all just support each other in getting the real news out. So I want everyone to please retweet the space. I've just shared with you how to do that. Repost the space. Pin it to your profiles. So when you actually post the space, the three dots on the top right hand side of the post, you can pin it to your profile. Having said that, I've just seen a tweet from somebody saying people who rely on Mario Nofal for info or analysis need to be checked. I agree, they do need to be checked. Okay, guys, let me go on with some news. Really quickly, it's a heavy news day again today, and I think things are going to get interesting. So, just in the last hour, there's been a lot of statements coming out from various people in Israel today. And it seems to me that Israel is hell-bent on keeping this war going at all cost. And remember, the cost isn't theirs. The cost is America's. The cost is the GCC's. The cost is ours across the world. It doesn't cost Israel anything, not even manpower. So the former Israeli Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, has made a few statements. Firstly, he says, Spain's leadership has been abhorrent. I have to say, incredibly disappointing. And do you know why that is, guys, right? And you'll see in the news briefing that I give you today that Spain's getting quite a lot of bashing, right, from Israel. That's because the Spanish Prime Minister stood up and said, Israel and America should never have attacked Iran. Iran was no threat. And this is not our war. You didn't ask us before you went into this and did this attack. We're not going to be a part of it. And then Israel expelled the Israeli ambassador. Now, I'm proud that Israel did this. Israel was on the right side during the genocide. To be honest, I think Spain was on the right side during the genocide. And I'm proud that Spain did this, not Israel. But Spain should have expelled that Israeli ambassador a long time ago. But Spain is on the right side of history here, definitely on the right side of history. So now Israel's coming out all guns blazing. And the reason why they come out all guns blazing is they want to make sure they make an example of Spain. So nobody else has the courage that Spain has shown. Other countries' leaders will be scared to take a stand because they see Spain being bashed in the media. So he says Spain's leadership has been abhorrent, I have to say, incredibly disappointing. Well, I'd say the good people of the world, or the free world, as Iran and the resistance have always called us, the good people of the free world will say Spain's leadership has been absolutely amazing and they've set an example to the world. So this ex-Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett, also said, here's how it works. If you allow a threat to grow and grow, at some point it becomes so big that you can't manage it anymore. Like North Korea, where the world did not act, and now no one can eliminate those nuclear weapons. Funnily enough, when I read that first paragraph of what he said, the first part of that quote, it's almost like they're talking about Israel. He's talking about Iran, but for me, he's talking about Israel without a sense of irony. He says, here's how it works. If you allow a threat to grow and grow, at some point it becomes so big that you can't manage it anymore. I'm sorry, but that's Israel. Nobody's been able to manage Israel. Israel literally dictates to the United States of America. It dictates to the European Union. It dictates to Africa. It dictates to the GCC. It dictates to the UK. Like, who does it not control and dictate to? No other country would be able to get away with a genocide the way that Israel did for 3 years. North Korea has not done this. North Korea has not done what Israel has done. North Korea has no say over our governments and our countries. But anyway, these guys, every accusation is a confession. So let's move on. Trump's bestie, Alan Dershowitz. You know Alan Dershowitz. For those of you who don't, he was Epstein's lawyer. Good friend of Epstein's, met with Epstein even after his conviction. I believe he'd been on the island, maybe, but he's definitely been on the Lolita Express, the jet, Epstein's jet, many, 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 many times. So this is that guy, right? He says, and I'm sure he settled the case as well, Alan Dershowitz did, where somebody had accused him of something and he settled in a civil case of some sort. He paid off. So this is Trump's bestie, Trump's best friend, right? He says, had Trump been in charge in 1936, I think the Holocaust would have been prevented. I think he would have gone after Nazi Germany. He would have destroyed it the way he's destroying Nazi Iran. I have to tell you guys, right? When I read this, that Alan Dershowitz is saying, had Trump been in charge in 1936, he would have prevented the Holocaust and would have destroyed Nazi Germany the way he's destroying Nazi Iran. The first thing that came in my mind is, what kind of society have we become where people like this are given a platform, people like Alan Dershowitz, to spew such nonsense on primetime TV completely unchallenged? It's a decay of morality that this guy is given so much respect and prestige. What kind of society, what the Zios done that this guy is still considered to be a voice of authority? There isn't a Nazi Iran, right? Iran's the victim in this. But let me move on because I'm really annoyed. So when the Spanish Prime Minister has stood up, and I'll talk a little bit about Spain, I already have done, but basically made the statements he made. He came out very early, day one or day two, saying, whoa, watch it. You know, Israel and America should not have done this. Iran was not a threat. This is against international law. You didn't even take permission. We want no part of it. So then what they've started to do, apparently in Iran, is they put stickers on these missiles, right, with some message. Some of them have actually put, or one or two of them, I've seen this over the last few days, they thanked Pedro Sanchez. Pedro Sanchez is the Prime Minister of Spain. They thanked him. And, you know, these people, the resistance factions, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, the Iranians, whatever you want to say, they're not against us. They've always called us out as the free people, the good free people of the world. Even when Hamas used to do their statements, they used to thank the students. They used to hold up, the kids in Gaza used to hold up pictures thanking the students in America at the student encampment, because they used to feel pride that these people are actually standing up for us. They care about us. The world cares about us. This is what the children in Gaza used to feel. They used to like those people, those American people that used to stand up for them. So they're not against us, they're against the governments. So anyway, they've been thanking Pedro Sanchez, right? Because Pedro Sanchez is actually taking a moral stance. So the the Israel Foreign Ministry government account, the grey tick official government account, is now crying. Check this, guys, right? They say, Pedro Sanchez, Iran's mullah regime. Like, what? What? Mullah what? It's become a mullah regime now? Like, seriously? Like, you want to throw every single stereotype that you have created in the last 2 decades at Iran now? Anyway, Iran's mullah regime is thanking you by putting your words on the missiles it fires at civilians in Israel and the Arab world. How does it feel knowing your face and words are on these missiles? Keep in mind that Europe, including Spain, is within range of these missiles. So they're trying to create fear, and they have been trying to create fear for the UK and Europe since the first day of this war. We've covered this before, if you've been listening to our spaces, that they're trying to insinuate that 4,000 kilometers can hit London, can hit here, can hit there. Iran said, look, we're not interested in hitting anywhere else. If you're not supporting Israel militarily in this, then we're not interested. And they have stuck to their word, and they will stick to their word. So as long as Keir Starmer doesn't lose his marbles and go all in, we're fine. Pedro Sanchez and Spain have zero to worry about. Those missiles from Iran will not be coming to Spain. If anything, the only thing he has to worry about is Israel. Now, that aside, the politics aside, I just want to say one thing. These people that are crying are the same people that signed missile after missile after missile. Nikki Haley from America went and signed a missile that was going to go into Gaza. Countless politicians from America have gone and signed missiles that went into Gaza and killed children. Right? Iran's trying to do its best not to actually hurt any civilians. It gives fair warning and it tells them what government or military site it's going to attack. It doesn't want to kill civilians. These people are the same people that signed Suleiman's name on a missile and sent him the picture in the early days of the genocide as a threat to him. And these are the people that are complaining about Pedro Sanchez, the Spanish prime minister, standing up and saying that, this is not a just war, that Israel and America were, bang out of order for hitting Iran the way it did. So there was that. Erdogan, the Turkish president's made quite a few statements today. He says the massacre network led by Netanyahu. I mean, look, right? Yes, this guy, Turkey does business with Israel. So does every other Muslim country. Let's not pretend, right? They're all in bed somewhere along the line with the Zios and with America. The thing is, most of them won't even call Israel out. But Erdogan, from the first day of the genocide, has never shied away from that. He says the massacre network led by Netanyahu must be stopped immediately for the sake of regional peace and humanity. Every country should take a brave and proactive stance on this issue. He's made quite a few statements today, actually. I will cover some of the other ones in a second. Let me tell you what else has been happening. Another tanker got through the Strait of Hormuz today. This time, safe passage was given to a Thai tanker. And Thai sources said that Iran granted permission to a Thai ship safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. And Thai sources said, friends will never be forgotten. Friends will not be forgotten. So, big news for people. The Strait of Hormuz is not closed. It's just not open to terrorist nations and terrorist supporting nations, I guess. The Israeli Air Force is investigating the failure to shoot down an Iranian ballistic missile that hit Tel Aviv this morning. Israel says it carried a conventional warhead and lightly injured 4 people and caused extensive infrastructure damage. So it's bish bash bosh Tel Aviv this morning. And now Israeli Air Force is saying we need to investigate how we didn't shoot down the Iranian ballistic missile. Well, there's a lot of them they ain't shot down. Gavin Newsom has made some statements today as well. And guys, you'll find all of this on Suleiman's X page, by the way. His team are putting out all the news, right? Like 24/7, they're on the news. So all of this and more you'll find on his X page. Gavin Newsom says, I revere the state of Israel. I'm proud to support the state of Israel. Literally. And then he says, I deeply, deeply oppose Netanyahu's leadership, his opposition to the two-state solution, and deeply oppose how he is indulging the far right as it relates to what's going on in the West Bank. So Gavin Newsom is two-siding this. Gavin Newsom is obviously, supporting the opposition party in Israel. And when he says indulging the far right as it relates to what's going on in the West Bank, what he means is the settlers that we have armed and supported to terrorize and burn the homes and kill families in the West Bank. That's what he's talking about, but he daren't say it because he doesn't want to look like he's going against Israel. News from Pakistan as well. So Shehbaz Sharif, Pakistan's prime minister, said Pakistan welcomes and fully supports ongoing efforts to pursue dialogue to end the war in the Middle East in the interests of peace and stability in the region and beyond. Subject to concurrence by the US and Iran, Pakistan stands ready and honored to be the host to facilitate meaningful and conclusive talks for a comprehensive settlement of the ongoing conflict. Now, Trump actually reposted this, right? He didn't put a message on it. He reposted this. So obviously he supports it. Now, I like this. I like this because Saudi and Pakistan, and generally the GCC, are very close in countries anyway. Somebody needs to step up and say, look, we're happy to mediate. So whilst Pakistan is very close to Saudi and the GCC, Pakistan did not hold back. Pakistan did not hold back in actually criticizing Israel and America on this at all, not once. They called out Israel and America and said, you know what, this was not a legitimate war. They started this. This is terror, etc., etc. So Pakistan's position on this war morally has been right, and now they're offering to mediate. But you know what's interesting? When I read this, it says, subject to concurrence by the US and Iran, Pakistan stands ready and honored to be the host, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't mention Israel. It's basically saying, sack the Zios, right? We just want peace between America and Iran. And I'd be quite happy with that as the first step, to be honest. If America stayed out of it and made its peace with Iran, leave the Zios to Iran. I don't care if they bish bash bosh Israel all day long. Let Iran have Israel for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and bish bash bosh them all day. But what they're saying is we'll broker peace between America and Iran. So I'm liking this statement even more, guys. Read between the lines. I missed the end of the space last night. And for anybody else who did, you definitely should go and listen to it. I always miss the party at the end of the night. We run the space for like 14, 15, 16 hours. And then I kind of go and have a nap. And when I'm having a nap, you've got Dan Bilzerian coming on. You've got Ryan Dawson coming on. Dan Bilzerian, Ryan Dawson, Grant Cardone, they were all on Gary Cardone last night. And the conversation was fire. And I went back and listened to it. And the reason I mentioned that is because they were talking about the General Ford. Suleiman was chatting to them, and Dan's done some military service. I know, Andrew, you were there as well. So I was listening to it, and what a fire space it was. They were all giving their take on this, right? And one thing they all agree with is, A, it's going badly for America, and B, that America should have never got involved. So the General Ford that they were talking about last night, Bloomberg is reporting that the USS General Ford arrived in Crete, okay, which is Greece, after leaving the Middle East when listen to this, when a fire broke out on board, sending over 200 sailors for treatment. Guys, a fire does not injure 200 sailors, right? If a fire breaks out in the laundry room, there ain't going to be 200 sailors in a freaking laundry room. So that was the first thing. Go back and listen to that space from last night. Anyway, it says, this incident, the fire they're talking about, mysterious fire, highlights deeper problems. Despite costing $13.2 billion, not million, $billion, and entering service in 2017, the carrier still has unresolved issues with key systems like aircraft launch, radar, weapons elevators. The Pentagon says there isn't enough data to confirm its combat effectiveness. The ship's also been deployed longer than usual, about 9 months, raising concern about strain on both equipment and crew. Now, when I read this, my thought was, okay, so you've deployed it for 9 months. You've put God knows how many, a few hundred, maybe a few thousand sailors on there. Okay, 9 months out at sea. And now you're saying you haven't got enough data to confirm its combat effectiveness? And yet it costs $13 billion, and you put all those sailors and $13 billion of equipment at sea for Israel without knowing whether it was like effective for combat. Disastrous. This is being reported by Chief National Security Correspondent for Fox News. She says the Major General Brandon Tagtmeyer and his command staff from the 82nd Airborne Division have been ordered to the Middle East as the Pentagon considers sending the division for potential ground operations. So she's saying they're preparing for ground invasion. And she's naming the 82nd Airborne Division and the Major General of that division. So we keep you updated on that. Let me see what else there was quickly. Yeah, this was not good. No. Israel's defense minister said that Israel will occupy southern Lebanon up to the Litani River. And this is the first time they've made a very clear statement with their intent to seize that territory. They're basically saying, we're going to occupy and take over all of South Lebanon. Now, we used to say this during the genocide. People about, why are Hezbollah fighting? Why do they fight? You know, the Lebanese government is okay with Israel and America. If Hezbollah gave up, there would be peace. And we used to say no, because Israel wants to take part of southern Lebanon. They just want that part of the country completely, take ownership and control of it. They've tried many times before and they've failed, and now they're trying again. So there's speculation that Iran could rake in $80 billion a year if they charge transit fees for the Strait of Hormuz, because ships are already paying $2 million. The United Nations experts have called on Israel to immediately release Dr. Hussam Abu Saifia. Remember, this is the brave doctor that walked into the tank. He said he would surrender himself if they left the patients in the hospital in Gaza instead of blowing up the whole hospital. And he walked, and remember that iconic image of him walking towards the tank and walking in the tank. He's not been seen since then. And the United Nations is warning that he's been subjected to severe torture in Israeli detention. And they use the word severe torture. So, well, it seems to me like the world generally is blind to Israeli crimes, which is why Iran is doing what it's doing. Iran's fighting for the world, and I will maintain that Iran is fighting for the world. The Financial Times in the UK, surprisingly, says Netanyahu is gambling with Israel's future. So it seems as though the Financial Times, which is owned by Rupert Murdoch has turned against Netanyahu. Now, either it's because he thinks Netanyahu's not doing a good enough job or he should do things differently. But anyway, there was some more statements by Erdogan. Israel's uncompromising, maximalist and radical stance must not be allowed to sabotage diplomatic solutions. So again, Turkey's basically saying, you know what? They're going to try to sabotage diplomatic solutions, kick them out of the negotiation. It should be about America and Iran. And I support that. All right. No one wants to negotiate with a terrorist nation like Israel. I care about America. I don't give two hoots about Israel, to be honest. Israel can go to hell for all I'm concerned. He also said this war is Netanyahu's war for political survival. This is President Erdogan on Iran. He said, although the war is Israel's war, the whole world is paying the price. And he's right. It is Israel's war. And everyone across the world is paying a price. And he says the war is Netanyahu's war for political survival. But 8 billion people are suffering the consequences. And he's not wrong. At the same time, Netanyahu last night gave an interview or made a speech or something, and he said that he spoke with Donald Trump, vowing to continue to strike both Iran and Lebanon. So he's vowing to continue to strike both Iran and Lebanon. So let me translate that. What it means is I've spoken to Trump and America's going to continue doing our dirty work for us. Now, it is Israel that's sending the troops in for Lebanon and doing the Lebanon part, but America has to continue the Iran part. That's what he's saying. This was quite good, guys. So Iran's Minister of Energy says Iran generates, and remember, guys, Iran is a country that's been under sanctions for decades, like really struggled. Like, you know, when countries, I've been to Cuba a number of times, and when you go there, you can see that the country's under sanctions. But Iran's a different beast altogether. Different beast. So whilst being under sanctions, bear that in mind. This is what Iran's Minister of Energy says. He says, Iran generates electricity through a decentralized system and operates more than 150 power plants that they built entirely on their own. He says, in contrast, the countries bordering the Persian Gulf and Israel generate electricity through a centralized system, which makes them extremely vulnerable. Now, why did he make that statement? What he's saying to America and Israel is, look, you're going to heat our electricity generators. We've got 150 power plants that we built on our own, and it's a decentralized system. But you guys only got one each. We take that out, you're going to be in darkness. That's what he's saying. So be careful. Apparently, Israeli Knesset, which is their parliament session, was suspended today as Iran launched massive missile barrages. Good. A senior Iranian foreign ministry official told CBS News, I don't validate this. I don't know if it's true, but I'm just telling you that CBS News reported that a senior Iranian foreign ministry official told them exclusively that, and I quote, we received points from the US through mediators and they are being reviewed. So maybe Iran and America are having a little chat, you know? and that'd be good for everybody. This happened, which should surprise nobody. Rothschild Bank was searched in Paris on Friday as part of the Epstein investigation. Completely unrelated, but kind of not really unrelated. So the Rothschild Bank was searched in Paris on Friday as part of the Epstein investigation. Mr. Rothschild here lives in England with his wife, Lady Annabel, and her daughter, Jemima Khan, who was married to Imran Khan, who was Mr. Rothschild's stepson-in-law. They spread all across Europe, these people. This is good, right? So Pete Hegseth, this is Trump's war minister, spoke out about the shortages of Tomahawk missiles in the US and said that weapons reserves decreased under Biden due to supplies to Ukraine. So he's saying, yeah, we ain't got enough weapons, but it's because of Biden. The truth is, the US never transferred Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. Hegseth's lying. The truth is, the real truth is, the raw truth is, these people started a war without having real levers of power. And now they're shifting the blame to others. Today it's Ukraine, tomorrow it's going to be NATO. That's the truth. They actually thought, take out Khamenei. You know what? When you sent in, I was actually thinking about this today, you sent in all these Mossad CIA agents, and they go around the streets and butchered people, massacred security staff, police staff, anybody and everybody they could. Over 3,000 people were massacred. Can you imagine if somebody did that in your home city? I live in London, wherever it is that you live. Think about if that was happening there, where foreign agents were going around massacring people. Can you imagine the chaos it would cause? That chaos, these idiots in the White House were led to believe that chaos was that people wanted regime change, that people were actually against the Israeli leadership. That chaos was nothing to do with the massacre and the bloodshed going on the streets. So they killed Khamenei, and the country united. And now they don't know what to do because they didn't have a plan after that. They're making it up as they go along, which is why Pete Hegseth, I mean, imagine washing your dirty laundry in public when you're at war. Let's just say it was Biden's fault, right? The guy had dementia anyway. Let's just say it was his fault. How would you go on TV and wash your dirty linen in public and say, oh, yeah, we as a country don't have enough weapons because our previous president gave them all to Ukraine, so we ain't got any. Like, what kind of behavior is this? Who are these people? German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier has said on Iran, this war is a politically disastrous mistake. He calls it a politically disastrous mistake. Now, guys, it's really important, right? Because you're not going to get these statements that all these leaders are saying anywhere on mainstream news. You won't get it on the Zio spaces. So once again, I'm just going to pause before I finish the statement and ask everybody to quote tweet the space and retweet the space, right? This team, Suleiman's team, takes a long time pulling all this together so we can tell you how people across the world are really talking about it. Leaders are really talking about it. So, and everybody who quote tweets it, the purple pill on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. If you're on the space, there's a purple pill, bottom right-hand side of your screen. There should be a number on there. Press that pill. You'll see the space there. Quote tweet it from there, and Suleiman will retweet you. So the German president, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, said, this war is a politically disastrous mistake, a truly avoidable, unnecessary war. This is what he's calling it, a truly avoidable, unnecessary war if its goal was to stop Iran on its way to the atomic bomb. So when I read that, what he's saying is this war is politically disastrous mistake, truly avoidable, unnecessary war if the goal was to stop Iran on its way to the atomic bomb, which is basically saying if Iran weren't thinking about the atomic bomb before, they should be now. That's what he's saying. If the goal was to stop them, you got it so wrong. So he's calling out, without mentioning Israel and America, he's talking about it. Retired IRGC Commander Mohammad Bagher Zolkader has been appointed the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council by presidential decree. So he's going to be replacing Dr. Ali Larijani, who was assassinated last week by Israel. He was very close to Dr. Ali Larijani. Dr. Ali Larijani's successor. These people, man, these people. You remember that? Israeli chick, right? Her name was Myrav Ben Ari. She was a Knesset member, so a member of Israeli parliament. She's actually a member of parliament. And during the Gaza genocide, she stood in Israeli parliament and she said, there is no symmetry. The children in the Gaza Strip brought this on themselves. She used to call for the annihilation of children. She used to say those children brought it on themselves and that they should be killed. She used to say things like flatten it, kill them all. She used to stand in parliament and said that. Anyway, her house was destroyed by an Iranian missile this morning. Israeli media was saying her home was destroyed by an Iranian missile this morning. She was in parliament at the time, so obviously it didn't impact her. But I've no doubt we're going to see a lot of tears coming out. Turkish agency Anadolu is saying that since the beginning of the war, Iran has hit at least 12 American and allied radar systems with an approximate value of over $3 billion. This is all your tax money, guys. Anybody American on this space, this is your tax money, $3 billion just being blown up. Add on the billions for that ship that just got sent to Crete, which is not functionable anymore. Billions and billions and billions, not to mention the lives lost from Iran and America for Israel's war. So yeah, 12 radar systems, at least 12 radar systems been taken out. I think that's it from me now for now, Suleiman, to be honest. I'll pass it back to you. Oh, Jonah's here. Hi, JD.
Thank you.
Hey there, guys.
Who's interrupting?
It's me. My bad. I had a question.
Yeah. Oh, bro. Okay, look, quite a bit to speak about, guys. 1 second. Just wrap this up. Okay, so lots to speak about, guys. Make sure you retweet the space, reshare the space. There is some movement going on and this is Beatrix mentioned this, but I just want to highlight it. First of all, Hezbollah missiles impact in Safad, Israel right now. So there is missiles and they have hit Safad in Israel right now. So there is a bombardment of missiles. In addition to that, what's important is we've been talking about the 82nd Airborne Division. It's now confirmed that the Pentagon is sending 3,000 troops from the 82nd Airborne Division to the region. We also have Iran hit Tel Aviv with a missile carrying 220-pound warheads that have not been used before. So a lot of movement and motion happening. In terms of the news, it does look like Pakistan has been positioned as a possible mediator in this war. So you have it where basically, because Pakistan has good relations with both countries, it seems like they've been placed as a possible mediator. Let's hope they fulfill that duty properly, as opposed to you know, being a shill for the United States of America. So we'll see how that goes. But it is at the moment Trump. Basically, I wrote a tweet on this. I wrote, Trump ran to Pakistan for a ceasefire. Iran is winning. I think no truer words have been spoken. So yeah, this is what's happening. But let's bring in the conversation. Let's get some of the panelists into the conversation, and let's see how it goes. Joe, thanks for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Give us your thoughts. Okay, let's go to Conscious. Conscious, are you there?
Yes, thank you,
You wanted to give us
Sulaiman. I'm
updates?
doing very well. Yes, I do have the update. I will open the file just one sec. Yeah. So I will mention my remarks in the beginning, and then I will go for the important numbers which changed from yesterday. In general, there was no major mass casualties events after the Dimona and Ard strikes, which happened 2 days ago. So the most of the changes which we saw in terms of casualties from yesterday until today are for Iran and Lebanon. The change, like for Iran in particular, is because of the rubble and because of like clearance and because of the late reports. However, I would say that the injuries numbers were stable for even for Iran. So I put it around 19,000 because of the range which I saw in the reports. The number of like killed increased around 40 for Iran from yesterday. So I put all the numbers for all the countries in the purple pill. So I will be just focusing on some remarks. Lebanon, unfortunately, is the only besides Iran is the only country which we still see increases in both. We have 200 more injuries for Lebanon, and again also around 40 deaths in Lebanon. I also noticed that Reuters and Al Jazeera are reporting numbers for Gaza. Now, these numbers are Iran war spillover. This is how they refer to them. So I also included numbers for Gaza. Unfortunately, both Reuters and Al Jazeera tracker, they say that there are hundreds of people who were injured because of incidents. They are not like from missiles, but they say these were not possible if the Iran war would not happen. So I added them because Reuters and Al Jazeera reported them. For the Gulf countries, the numbers are stable. I have to say that these countries are censoring the reports more than in the early days of the war. So I will just mention the grand total for all the countries. All the numbers for all the countries for all days are available on my X account. But for today, I posted that in the comments of this of Sulaiman's space. For the grand total, I from all like the incidents, I would estimate that we have between 4,800 to 6,000 deaths and around like 30,000 injuries for all the countries, considering incidents by incidents. Yeah, thank you very much, Sulaiman.
Thank you. We have the Turkish president who's come out and also made the following statement. He said, the war must end by negotiation. He said, Israel's Israel's uncompromising, maximalist, radical stance must not be allowed to sabotage diplomatic solutions. No country that values world peace and stability should continue to add fuel to the fire that Israel has unjustly ignited in our region. So that was Erdogan, the president of Turkey. I go to Court Martial. Court Martial, thanks for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Give us your thoughts about anything you want to add about the war. Court? Okay, he might be away from his phone. Okay, let's go to Green. Go ahead, Green.
Hey, Silly, my bad about earlier, but I had a question. Do you Do you think these peace talks are just like a diversion for them to like prepare to get groups like army on the ground, like boots on the ground?
Personally, yeah, I do think so. I know people, there's many people who think that the negotiations are legitimate, people who believe that the negotiations are real. Um, and there are some form of negotiations going on. From my understanding, there is a, I don't know if this has been reported in the mainstream media or not, but from my understanding, there is some kind of temporary ceasefire between Qatar, UAE, maybe some other Gulf states, and Iran. And so I'm not seeing any reports of any bombs being hit there, and it seems like the air traffic is normal. So they must have some kind of agreement, like you don't help hit us, and we are not going to hit you over the next 4 days. So it seems like that's one thing that's happened in terms of negotiation. But in terms of overarching negotiation with the United States of America, well, it seems like Pakistan's been added as a kind of arbiter of the negotiations between the two parties. I don't think that there is gonna. If Iran falls for this, then Iran's just extremely foolish. I don't think they will, but just to let you know, um, personally, I think that what's happening is Trump is just using delay tactics over the next 4 or 5 days for his, in the hopes that they either capitulate, and if Iran doesn't capitulate, then the ground invasion is coming in five. I would say in 5 days. I think the 5 day deadline is because that'll get his troops where they need to be.
Yeah, interesting. I also feel like maybe they might do that to focus more on South Lebanon, or Trump is doing that to just to bring out the stock market back up or something like that,
Yeah, that's why he
so
mentioned.
the economy doesn't collapse.
That's why he mentioned the 5 day thing. He mentioned 5 days A for the stock market, and B to allow his troops to get to them where they need to get to. So the ME units to be in place where they need to be.
Suleiman, where do you think they're going to invade?
Um, I still think Carg Island. I know.
I think if they were going to, they would be very quiet about it. The fact that it's been leaked to the media over and over and over again about like these anonymous sources saying that they're talking about invading Karg Island means that that's like the last place they're going to go.
Yeah, I thought about this argument a lot, and actually, this is what many people are arguing. Is what you're saying. I think Ryan holds this position as well. The thing is, when I look at all the other options, I mean, it's possible they take somewhere else, but there's like less utility to it. So, obviously, Ryan's theory, I considered that. Um, and my problem with that one is you would need about 50,000 troops or 100,000 troops, and
But what's his theory?
well, he doesn't want to say it publicly because he thinks it'll help the Americans because he thinks that's the most strongest position to do. I don't, I don't think it's. I think that his position, the problem with it is it requires a lot of manpower. It is a weak spot. I agree with him on that, but it requires a lot of manpower, and they're simply not sending that. So I don't think that's what they're gonna do. Um, the other islands they mentioned, the Hormuz Island or the other island of the Gulf of Oman. The problem with that is if you take it, like what? Like you just take it, and then what? Like what's the kind of
Yeah,
utility in it?
unless you're going to take it in order to like move other assets into it, like you're only taking it in order to prepare. This is what happened in prior wars. We take
So
an
holding
island and
position.
then
But
we
the
bring in
problem,
some people to bring in
yeah,
like heavier equipment and stuff like that.
the
But
problem,
then what's the point
yeah,
of
yeah.
that?
Exactly. No, the problem with what you're saying is, and I agree. What you would maybe do is to grab it for a holding position, but to take a holding position with not much defense in an island that's very close to Iran is actually very stupid. You would have a huge amount of casualties in that as well.
Yeah, you're just
And
making yourself an easier target.
exactly, with no leverage in terms of no leverage on the other side. So that's why I don't think it'd be that island. That's why I think the Strait of Hormuz islands don't make sense as well because Iran's able to hit you with the drones quite easily, hit you with the missiles quite easily.
I've got
So
a theory,
when you
by the
take,
way.
so if you take all of those things into consideration, that's why I still think the Hormuz makes a bit more sense in the sense of they can use the oil as a leverage. So Iran then has to actually make a decision whether they want to destroy their own oil capability in Karg Island. So for me, that makes a slightly more sense from all the rest for that reason. But what's your theory?
So my theory is they're bringing them in with the Ospreys to do air raids to just basically find a target where they think there's a weapon cache or something like that that's hidden, fly in a bunch of Marines or other forces with Ospreys, land them, do whatever they're going to do to do demolition or capture some people or something with whatever their goal is for that raid, and
So
then
this is
jump back
mainland
in and fly
Iran.
out.
You talk about mainland Iran?
Yeah, like anyway, it could be on an island somewhere if they think there's weapon caches there or something, or it could be somewhere in mainland Iran near the Strait of Hormuz, for example, if they think they've got like a stockpile of anti-ship missiles hidden nearby or something like that. But I think they're going to be doing raids targeting particular areas where maybe they wouldn't be able to find what they're looking for from the air as much.
Okay. Okay.
But like in and out, like smash and grab type stuff, not like where you actually stay and try to control any area.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that would be less a risk of casualties. The problem is, again, you'd be an easier target within Iran. So again, that has that other same problem in it. What we're saying,
Yeah, they would
and
only do it if the intelligence told them that it was safe to do, basically.
how would they get in? Like from what location?
No, well, they're gonna Ospreys have long range, so they can fly in. I don't think they're actually going to fly off of the little mini carrier, the Tripoli. I don't think they're gonna fly off of there. I think they're gonna fly the Ospreys into the Gulf states and then stage from there and fly
Oh,
from
you think
there to wherever they're gonna go.
they're gonna come in from the Gulf states? And but then even something like that, the Iranians would see it coming, right? Because of the distance.
The
Well,
Osprey is
that's
like a flying
like
elephant.
they know where the radars are and the defenses are somewhat. Now, if their intelligence is wrong, they could end up with a problem on their hands. But if they believe they're like this particular area has been cleared out, we know there's no defenses here, we know they don't have any real troops here, it's kind of a quiet place, then that would be a place that they would target to try to send in some kind of a raid and then get in and get out. Now,
And how
after they
many?
do a raid or two, and this becomes
Yeah.
known to the Iranians, they're probably going to start moving a lot of troops around these areas.
How many? How many of these? How many of these planes would they use?
Well, it depends. It would depend on the target, but they could use as few as like two or three.
And how many people would be on there?
I think they hold like 20 to 30 off the top of my
That's right.
head.
I think it's 24. Um, oh yeah, about 20. So basically, you're saying like 20 or 40 people just jump in and out, traverse a large distance, hoping that basically Iran doesn't have radars, isn't equipped to defend themselves in the actual strait or key locations.
I mean, they're going to be escorted and stuff like that, obviously. So they're going to have air cover. Basically, what you would have is you have a group of people that come into an area where they believe that there are weapons hidden in their area. They drop the people off, the people go around, they search the area in like a limited amount of time. Maybe it's 20, 30 minutes. They search the area, they try to find something. If they do find something, they put in some explosive charges and try to blow it up, and then they leave the area. And while they're there, they're going to have like air support flying around them and stuff in order to provide them with some kind of protection.
Yeah, I think they're going to be hit hard and they're going to be taken out that way. But let's go to Cart. Cart, you're going to add some up?
Yeah, what up, bro? It's been a minute. My bad. I was away from the phone a little bit earlier. I had to grab something, but yeah, I was listening to Buddy here, and it tactically, this is a very commonly used tactic by the U.S. when using insertion into enemy territory. But here's the problem. So let's start with one thing at a time. The Osprey. The Osprey is like Dumbo. It's like a flying elephant. Even with air cover, right? Even if they send F-15s, F-16s, F-22s ahead of the Ospreys, we know already that Iran has shot down F-35. So if they can shoot down an F-35, these Ospreys won't be any problem at all. That's probably the least the least difficult part of his plan. Now, I have friends, I have a couple of friends who are currently still 82nd Airborne, right? And I can tell you that the sentiment amongst the 82nd Airborne is that if Trump sends them in and orders paradrops over Clark Island, they feel like it's going to turn into duck hunt. They feel like they're going to be shot out of the air, like at a freaking circus, a little kid at a circus playing a circus game, just taking pot shots at
By what?
falling. By what?
Wait, just
Yeah, we
Manko,
already
can you
destroyed
let
the
him finish?
defenses.
Manko, can you just
No,
let
no,
him
no,
finish his
no. See,
point?
that's you eating up the propaganda, right? You're eating up the propaganda. We've destroyed their air defenses. If we destroyed their air defenses, our air campaign would have taken off weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. We would have destroyed their critical infrastructure that allows them to keep prosecuting their defense. But that hasn't happened because their air defenses aren't defeated. That's propaganda, buddy. Like, you have to just use what you have. Look at the inconsistency that's been coming out day after day from the administration. He says one thing, we're going to destroy their infrastructure, we're going to destroy their oil capabilities. And then the next day he's saying, oh, we're having really good talks. We're having really good talks. Me and the Ayatollah will control the Strait of Hormuz. Listen, man, don't eat up the propaganda. There is no feasible scenario where U.S. servicemen and women are inserted onto Iranian mainland or Karg Island or Hormuz, and it doesn't turn into a mass casualty event, a massacre. It will be the worst military massacre, invasion massacre since the Bay of Pigs. It would be a failure, a complete failure. They can't. Because here's also the thing. You drop let's say they drop 500 to 1,000 82nd Airborne troops on Karg Island. Now you have 1,000 stranded troops because the strait is closed. The maritime traffic is being monitored. Anything with even the slightest hint of hostile intentions is targeted. So you put them on the island, but then how do you feed them? How do you resupply them? It's not feasible. And I believe that Trump has his top generals, at CENTCOM and at JSOC telling him there is no way for us to invade Iran. It just isn't. They've prepared for this for 40 years, 4 decades. They've been preparing for an invasion. This is not like Iraq and Afghanistan, where you had some events that changed the international perception of your country, your culture, and now all of a sudden you have Bush and his army invading your country. This is not it. This is not happening. The problem is the propaganda has convinced Americans that Iranian capabilities fall short of being able to prevent a U.S. invasion. And that's probably the worst thing that could have been done to the American populace, because now everyone thinks we're winning a war that we're losing really bad. We're losing it really bad, deservingly. Deservedly, we're losing this war really bad. And there's no off ramp that includes the US taking control of any part of Iranian territory. So this is what Donald Trump is doing now. He's looking for an off ramp. The problem is he has the Israelis that want to keep up the attack. They want to keep going. They want to keep pressing, but he knows it's not in the American interest anymore. It never was. It never was to begin with, but now he can clearly see that we're dying. We're losing money. You hear them say, "Oh, we gave too much equipment to Ukrainians." It's because we've depleted our munitions. So these talks where Trump says, "Oh, I'll give them 5 days." My theory is he needs these 5 days to resupply. He needs 5 days to resupply because they've been shooting, they've been flying, they've been the fact that the U.S. military has lost the number of aircraft that we have in these 3 weeks, that alone That alone should tell the entire story. Or we're not fighting a third world army. We're not fighting a country that's ill prepared. We're fighting a people, a population of 90 million. 90 million. Iran is the size of Alaska, mountainous. It is a disaster for military operations, right? If you had to choose a position on a war board, Iran would probably be in the most advantageous position because they have the experience fighting in the mountains. They have the experience using guerrilla tactics. They've had the benefit of watching U.S. equipment in use in Ukraine, getting intelligence from Russia on U.S. assets being used in Ukraine. So there's been time. We saw Iraq and Afghanistan. They've had time to study the enemy, but the enemy has not had that same opportunity. The U.S. has not had they've had to depend on intelligence, faulty intelligence at that, to kind of keep up with the progress of the Iranian military, the IRGC. There's no one, there may be a few spies on the ground in Iran, but there is no one that is providing a really concise and descriptive, detailed information or intelligence about Iranian capabilities. So at this point that we are 3 weeks into this, we're 3 weeks into this, right? And if I'm not mistaken, the War Powers Act says the president can do this for 30 days, keep up the attack for 30 days before needing congressional approval. And he has 30 days to, I believe, someone correct me if I'm wrong.
60 at 60, bro.
Nobody
Okay, so
follows
60.
that though. We've had a bunch of wars since they did that, and everyone just ignores it.
Yeah, of course, right. So so his time, Trump's time that he has to make this make sense to the American people is diminishing, and the approval is the approval is so low that even if he had 180 days to prosecute this unjust war, the American people would not get on board with it. So right now, this is the U.S. military is really at a loss, and as a veteran, man, it really hurts me because I know that our leaders in the military they have to be advising Trump against this because they're some of the most intelligent, smart, and experienced generals and commanders on the planet, but yet Donald Trump knows better than everybody. He's the apprentice, right? He knows better than generals who served for 35 years. He knows better than generals who were serving when the Islamic Revolution took place. He knows better than them because his masters in Israel said, "Hey, you can do this." And not just Israel. I read today. I don't know if it was Beatrix that was quoting it a bit earlier, but I just read today that behind the scenes, MBS is, which we know this, MBS is lobbying Trump to keep up the war, keep up the pressure, keep up the war. So Trump has all these people, who one is his greatest ally, right, Israel, but one has promised all of these trillions of dollars in investment, telling him, "Oh, you can win, you can win." But in reality, there is no winning scenario for the U.S. here, unless we just go ape shit like we did in Japan and drop nuclear weapons on Iran, which we will not do. Israel's more likely to attempt that, right? But there is, I'll just land. There is no scenario where a U.S. invasion is remotely successful, right? Even if they take Karg Island, they may secure the Karg Island. They will not hold it. Guaranteed. We just don't possess the capability to hold territory that far away from the homeland, that far away from, or that cut off from resupplies. So, yeah, man, I mean, I appreciate the analysis of it because it really is, it really does speak to U.S. Military doctrine and tactical decision making. But in this scenario, no, it just doesn't work.
I think if the United States really cared about trying to take and hold on to some kind of Iranian territory, we would have seen two big things where there's at least more of a chance of it being more successful. Number one, you would see a lot of troops and equipment and all sorts of other assistance and stuff going up to the Kurds and have them in position and ready to assist to do some sort of ground attack. But it wouldn't be limited to them either. They would also be a large amount of assistance and efforts and diplomatic stuff and all this other stuff going on with Azerbaijan. If you could get the Kurds and Azerbaijan to attack into the northwest corner of Iran together with a bunch of air support, you might be able to make some progress there. However, we don't see any, like, even one step toward doing any of that. So my conclusion is that I don't think anyone wants any of the territory of Iran.
I don't think I think they want it. They just can't take it because with your Azerbaijan example, yes, that is a potential strategy, right? We get Azerbaijan's Kurdish militias to attack from the northwest. Except here's the problem: that's unrealistic. you know, Azerbaijan is not about to play with fire like this. Do you see how much?
Azerbaijan has a powerful and battle-tested ground force, which has seen a
Yes,
lot
they
more
do.
combat than Iran
Yes, they
has.
do.
So
But they
they
have
would have the
watched
advantage, if
Iran
anything.
decimate the Gulf countries and Israel with their missiles. Like they don't there won't be a scenario where Azerbaijan says we're willing to have our population bombarded so that we can help Donald
Number
Trump.
one, no, they haven't. Number one, the amount of damage that's been done has been very limited. And number two, Iran doesn't have the ammunition to
Propaganda,
be
buddy.
firing a lot
Again, you
at
swallowing
Azerbaijan
up the
anyway.
propaganda. Listen, bro, there are so many different pages on this social media platform that you could see entire um, neighborhoods gone. You know what they
No,
did to
you can't.
Gaza, right?
Where? Where?
We know what they did to Gaza, right?
Yeah,
But
that
we're
hasn't
seeing
happened
these
to the Gulf
same
countries or
things.
to Israel at all.
We're seeing these same things occur in places like Tel Aviv, Haifa,
No, we
Dimona.
haven't. There's nothing like I
Why
see
haven't we?
damage and
Are you
destruction
kidding
pictures
me?
of Israel all the time, and it's like a
Are you
little
kidding me?
random hit here and a little random hit there.
No,
It's
no, no,
not
no, sir.
anywhere
So
near
this
the level of
morning,
destruction
this
you saw
morning,
with Gaza.
Israeli media reported. This morning, Israeli media reported 9 people were injured in one missile strike in Iran, in Tel Aviv this morning.
Wait, so you mean they didn't even kill a single person? Wow, I'm so impressed. Wow, that's really Gaza
Right,
level of
because
devastation,
Iran does
isn't it?
not kill civilians, right? So the point isn't to kill your civilians.
Well, how
The
many
point is
civilians did
to
Israel
attack
kill
the
in Gaza?
infrastructure that you use to attack us.
Sure, how many
That's the point,
civilians
right?
did
So you just
Israel kill
made
in
it.
Gaza, though?
But you're making a really good point, right? They didn't kill anybody. People got injured, right? Because this is not the war doctrine of Iran to target civilians. That is an Israeli US doctrine, as we seen on the first day of the war when they bombed 168 schoolgirls. So of course, they didn't kill anybody, and some, unfortunately, innocent civilians, if you can call them that, occupying stolen territory, have been injured. So yeah,
Look, the
I agree with your
reports
point.
this
They didn't
morning
kill anybody.
that I
Yeah, you're
saw,
right.
even from Suleiman, the reports this morning are that the GCC countries are actually demanding and pushing for the US and Israel to do very damaging, punitive, like civilian infrastructure strikes on Iran, that they're pushing for that. So obviously, they're not acting out of fear if they're pushing for escalation.
I think there's a contradictory reporting on that, and I process both sides so you can get both pieces of information. So,
I was
so
just about to
on
say that,
the
Sully. I was just about to say that.
on the one hand, we're getting some reports saying that Saudi and UAE want this war to escalate and that they're gonna also be involved. But then on the other hand, I'm actually hearing that they want the opposite, and they're the ones who pushed Trump to basically renege. And the reason Trump folded, capitulated after the 48 hours was because of pressure from the GCC, because they're the ones who are going to be destroyed. And this 5-day extension was for the GCC because they're going to be destroyed. And I believe that there is some conversations with the Gulf states and Iran to say that, look, we won't allow US to use our airspace, don't hit us, and this is why we've actually not seen any hits today towards Dubai. in terms of the devastation that's occurring in the Gulf and Israel, it's actually a lot. The only problem is that when you're looking at it from an American Israeli mind frame, which is that we want to kill as many innocent civilians as possible. Yeah, there hasn't been 170 girls being murdered in Iran or in the Gulf states, but the infrastructure has been completely, the military infrastructure has been completely obliterated. The military assets have been decimated. You saw, for example, in Dimona, there was an actual military base that was hit. We saw the satellite imagery from that. And remember, we're just getting this from satellite imagery from the Chinese when we can, because Israel has a complete uh, wipeout of information that comes out. But when we do get some evidence of the hits, when this information does leak out, and largely speaking, it doesn't leak out from Tel Aviv or Haifa, uh, what you call it again? It's what do you call it again? Yeah, largely from Haifa. That's because they've got a media blackout. But when they hit smaller areas like Beersheba, we'll get the video and there'll be like a crater level hit. When it comes to Dimona, we got the videos. Arad, only one missile completely devastated the region. Now, obviously, it's not like Gaza, because Gaza, they were killing as many civilians as possible. They were just bombing huge payloads wherever they want, because the aim was to murder as many people as possible. But in terms of actual damage to Israel, I mean, Israel is being hit hard. The people are fleeing in mass numbers. The UAE, I know that as a fact that it is literally a ghost town. There is no one left there, hardly anyone left there, unless they are like underclass workers from poor areas. So, I mean, things are really bad for them. Hence, why? Why is it okay? Why is it Trump, the guy who's so strong? Look, everyone can play this propaganda, and they can play the games. But let's be clear on this. Why is it Trump gave an ultimatum? I'm giving you 48 hours. 48 hours. If you do not listen, you will be destroyed. Your power plants are going to be hit. Your nuclear energy is going to be hit. He gave the demand, Mr. R of the deal, Mr. Power of persuasion. But what happened? What happened was the 48 hours went up. Iran said, go do one. And Trump had to bend the knee, put his tail between his legs, and run off, because he realized he can't take it. He can't do anything when it comes to Iran. He's got to take it up the backside, because in reality, Iran said, you hit us, we're going to hit the Gulf states. And Trump realized that all of this financial benefit that he's getting from the Gulf states, all of the financial personal benefit he's getting from the Gulf states, is going to harm his own future situation. And so what did he do? He capitulated. And he's like, oh, guess what? You got another now 5-day extension. And so, but why not? If even if the aim is financial reasons, if the aim is to sorry, if the aim is financial reasons, the aim is to put the different assets in place, why even do a 48 warning if you can't follow through? Because they can't follow through. And I used to do extension of 5 days, because he realized that he hasn't got the ability to do to Iran what he wants to do. And actually, Iran's response is going to be far worse than anything that he's ever threatened. So
But
I think that's a
Suleiman,
good example.
isn't
Yeah.
that what Trump always does? Like last year, we saw him do on a bunch of different topics. He'll make some big threat at the beginning, and then within like a day or two, he will say, "Oh, I'm going to put an extension on this, and we're going to do a negotiation." Like he did that with tariffs a bunch of times, right?
Yeah, because he's working in a position of weakness. So even with the tariffs, it's because he had to do it. So he couldn't follow through on the tariffs. And I'm actually glad Rob's here, because we'll ask him on that. But in terms of the tariffs, first of all, he was not able to fulfill it because of, again, America not having the financial powerhouse that we believe, or that he thought they had. He pulled back on the tariffs. And then also, in addition to that, his Jewish Zionist billionaires basically told him that, look, you need to pull back. Many of us along the market, Bill Ackman, Ben Shapiro, many of these guys came out against the tariffs, and we know who controls him, so he had to pull back. So yeah, he is someone who capitulates a lot. He's a very weak man, especially in this administration. But he never used to be. In the past, he would actually follow through. It's just that now he's just a weak asset dealing with a weak situation, and he keeps putting America in weak positions and not being able to follow through. For example, he did follow through in Venezuela because he was dealing with a much weaker country. They didn't have the defense and the military capability. They were able, he said, I'm coming after you. We're going to come after Maduro. And he did it. He didn't pull back. He did it. But that's because he was able to do it. The only difference is with Iran, he's not able to do it. So it's basically he does it when he can, but when he can't, he has to pull back and capitulate.
So what do you
But
think is
Robert,
going to happen on Friday night?
Nothing.
nothing's gonna happen on Friday night. He's not gonna bomb the power plants. He's not gonna bomb the energy infrastructure. But he probably, I don't know if it's specifically gonna be Friday night, but because he'll probably capitulate again, knowing him. But what's gonna happen is, I believe, the more likely outcome is the ground invasion
Do you
into
think he's
one of
going to do
the.
an extension or anything?
Again, that one with Trump, it's possible because it just depends on how long it'll take the assets to get there. Because some of the assets are going to arrive, I believe, over the weekend. So he might need some kind of extension. It depends on what kind of pressure the social media puts on him about the 5 days. Because like we'll be like, oh, it's 5 days now. What's he doing? Like he did with the 48 days. Because we made a big palaver about it. Like, oh, 48-day countdown. What's happening? He had to come out today and kind of be like, oh, me sorry. Me sorry. Me don't mean it, Iran. Do not hit us. Me
Hey, Trilla,
sorry.
you know something? That actually has turned out to be a huge weakness for Trump this term in office. Whereas in his first 4 years, he was kind of really like supplemented and boosted by social media, and but now like he has this immense pressure from independent journalists that have such huge platforms like yourself, right? That can get the word out there to regular Americans that aren't drinking the Fox and CNN Kool-Aid, right? And now that pressure exists that wasn't there before, whereas he gives a timeline and on the end date, everybody's like, well, where's the action? Where's the follow through? So I mean, he has that pressure as well. It's so Trump
I
is
was
like being squazzed, bro.
Yeah, I was hearing the Justin Bieber song on Monday about him being sorry. That's what I was hearing. It was so painful for Trump, poor guy. It was like it was like Iran was Selena Gomez. But Robert, thanks for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Give us an update on the financial market, and then if you can tell us as well in terms of the tariffs. Once you've explained the kind of updates on the financial market in terms of the tariffs, what was the reason from your perspective or the financial perspective that Trump capitulated?
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, they're actually related, I would say, the tariff capitulation and what we're seeing today. So, yeah, obviously, there's been a lot of volatility. Stock market, only about 6.5% off the highs. So, nothing terribly concerning indicated there, not yet. You have, Brent oil trading about 100. That's a significant increase from where it was just a couple months or just a couple weeks ago. It's up about 40%. And you have dollar strength. The dollar strengthened. This is traditionally what would happen during a time of geopolitical tension and uncertainty. You have what's called a safety trade or safe haven bid in the dollar, where global capital kind of rushes to the dollar, thinking it is safe. But we've also had, I think, probably the most important move is not in the stock market, and arguably not even really oil. Although oil is kind of the first, the foundation for the second derivative, which is the bond market. So the bond market is not doing too well, and that's not just the case in America. It is true all over the world. So here in America, our benchmark 10-year treasury yield is up by about 45 basis points, or about half of 1%. That is, definitely a notable move, given that it has occurred just in the course of about 3 weeks. Half of 1% might not sound like a lot, but in the bond market, when you're talking, tens of trillions of dollars, and the debt load and whatnot, half of 1% can be pretty sizable. So that has definitely been notable, but it's been even worse in UK, in France, in Germany, in Japan. There in the UK, for example, they're talking about, or their bond market is indicating, interest rate hikes from their central bank, which would not be too good for the UK. They are not doing too well as an economy already. And so, to hike interest rates when oil is going up to the degree that it is I understand a lot of people are worried about inflation, but I think that that's kind of being a little bit short-sighted. I think that the more important thing to be concerned with is the amount of demand destruction that has to occur. So if, for example, the Strait of Hormuz carries 20 million barrels per day, and that strait is now closed, well, the other way of saying that is that 20 million barrels of oil demand must vanish. How do you get that to happen? You get that to happen with a much higher oil price. Now, it's not a full 20 million. There are offsets here and there. Fujairah, the East-West pipeline, Saudi Arabia, that can be increased by about 3 million barrels. But kind of all in, once you factor in
Well,
all the
plus
offsets.
you got to remember all the sanctioned oil being released, which is hundreds of millions of barrels, and then the petroleum reserve releases as well.
Yeah, so once you factor in all the offsets, at least according to my math, and people can fact check it, it's my pinned post. According to my math, we're at about 13.5 million barrels per day taken offline, including the SPR release. The problem there is not the total amount, but the flow rate, and also that is time limited, right? So the prospect of this conflict dragging on for another week is way different than the prospect of this conflict dragging on another 3 months, for example. Oil at 100, that might be okay if the conflict, comes to a rapid conclusion. Personally, I'm not a geopolitical expert, but personally, from what I've seen, it doesn't look like there's really any indication of that. But if the conflict is going to drag on for 3 months or 4 months, you're talking about an oil price that would have to be significantly higher given the fact that oil is so inelastic. And the bond market is what caused Trump to capitulate. So go back to April to answer the second question on tariffs. What caused Trump to capitulate back in April? The stock market was, gapping down every day, right, and selling off. But it was really the bond market. We started to have indications of kind of like early stage emerging market balance of payments crisis in the global reserve currency in the US. Just, not the kind of thing that you see stocks down, bonds down, currency down. We were having, unlike what we're seeing today, at least, the stock market's down, bond market's down, yields up, but at least the dollar is getting bid. Go back to April during the tariff chaos, the dollar was dumping. Like there were like daily 1% moves lower in the dollar, which again for foreign currency, in the FX market, a 1% daily move is huge. And we were getting that like day after day after day. I think there were like 3 days in a row of 1% or more decline in the dollar. So, it was looking very emerging market. Balance of payments crisis, fiscal crisis, debt crisis, financial crisis, currency crisis. It was looking really bad. And Bessent, obviously a Treasury Secretary, he comes from arguably the best macro fund that has ever existed with Soros. You can say what you will about Soros and what he does politically, but the way he made all that money that he has to throw around in politics is running a macro hedge fund, and arguably was the best to ever do it. Our current Treasury Secretary, he came from working under Soros with Stan Druckenmiller and some of the best to ever exist when it comes to macro traders. Bessent recognized for sure, I know for a fact, that he was looking at stocks down, 2% every day, bonds down, yields up 10 basis points in a single day kind of thing, and the dollar selling off 1% a day. Bessent was looking at that and telling Trump, this is really bad. You gotta pivot. And this time around, we are getting the bond market, lower, yields up. We are getting that, but the kind of saving grace this time around that makes it, in my opinion, different from April is that the dollar is getting bid. It's up about 2% if you look at the DXY dollar index. That is heavily weighted to the euro. The dollar is up even more relative to some of the Asian kind of emerging market currencies, which are really, really going to be hammered by the higher oil. The higher oil is really going to hurt Asia and Europe. And when their economies, their current account gets pressured, remember they have very, very large entitlement programs, benefit programs. So 50% of their economy, of their GDP, is from government spending. So they have a lot of obligations to pay out, and they just got a way higher energy bill. So the way that they fund that, and we know from looking at 2022, the last kind of oil price spike, we know the way that they come up with the dollars needed to pay for that higher oil price is by selling U.S. Treasuries and selling of U.S. equities, U.S. stocks, which, selling of U.S. stocks, that removes the wealth effect, which is what has been powering consumer spending, and consumer spending is 2/3 of U.S. GDP. So, foreign selling of stocks in a large amount could plunge the U.S. into a recession. And if you look at the bond market, foreign selling of U.S. Treasuries, what that leads to is higher rates, higher yields, but higher yields attract more capital. More of the global capital goes, I get a better interest rate here in America in the dollar. Capital flows here. The dollar strengthens even more, which means that the Europe and Asia energy price, because it's priced in dollars and they're short dollars, they're denominated in euros or yen or whatever, their energy bill just went up when the dollar strengthened. And so what they have to do, they have to sell more U.S. Treasuries. Well, that causes higher interest rates, more dollar strength. More dollar strength equals bigger burden, right? So more selling. And it becomes kind of a reflexive feedback loop. This is the dollar milkshake theory for people that are familiar. So, the U.S. is definitely not immune from kind of global financial contagion, if you want to use that word. We're not immune, but when you look just kind of purely on the physical level, we are in a much better spot than, say, Asia or Europe, who rely on imports for their energy. And also, not only do they rely on imports, but that energy is priced in dollars, and they're structurally short through the euro dollar system. They're structurally short dollars. So this is kind of like, for people familiar with the dollar milkshake theory, I kind of faded that for a while there. It was looking like, he might be wrong. I'm coming back around to it because it does appear to be kind of what's playing out.
Robert, Gary here. If this goes on 3 to 4 weeks, what would you anticipate the impact to be to the world markets?
I think Asia and Europe are definitely going to be in a recession. The problem, going back to 2020, we saw demand for oil crater by about 23 million barrels per day. But that was a demand shock. And, it's very easy to print a bunch of money. We can print, the ECB or the Fed, we can print, $10 trillion in an afternoon. And also, those were government imposed lockdowns that could be released or reversed, right, overnight. That's quite easy. But it's a whole other thing when you're talking about the physical world, and we just can't print oil. And so demand is going to have to fall. We're already seeing, kind of indications of the early stage of that in Asia, right? So Southeast Asia, I would argue, you're kind of already seeing the early indications. We could very well also see another kind of EM currency crisis, like we saw in the 1990s. I think that that's something that definitely to keep an eye on. I think that, if you're Japan, if you're Thailand, Indonesia, and you rely on imports for your energy, those energy imports just went up a lot. Not only in dollar terms, right, that we talk about, right, Brent's at 100 or 110, but because the dollar is strengthening as well in line with that, the energy bill went up even more. which again kind of can create a reflexive, kind of feedback loop. So I think for Asia, I think another. I would argue maybe they're all right. Maybe the cake is already baked for them. Now in the U.S., I think we have a little bit more time, maybe
Let's
two,
do
3 weeks.
Europe first. What if Asia goes into recession? What's Europe doing?
Oh, they're in a recession as well. Yeah.
Deep recession with a capital R, I would say.
Yeah, and like during 2022, it's important to remember that we got a recession. Oil price, if you look throughout history, before every single recession, going back to the past 50 years, oil spikes really high, makes a big move. And then, that destroys demand. It's a very kind of late cycle sort of indication to see commodities start to rip higher. It's a very kind of late cycle thing. And then you get a recession, right? Then you get the demand destruction, which is a fancy term for people stop buying stuff, right? And the economy kind of. So, yeah, I think Asia, I think that we're already seeing that demand destruction, and we know kind of how it plays out, which is in order to fund the higher energy bill, they sell U.S. Treasuries and they sell U.S. equities. Now we know how much do they own of that stuff. Well, it's about $65 trillion on a gross basis of U.S. Treasuries, U.S. equities, and real estate. So they own really a lot of financial assets that they can sell for a long time. Our net international investment position is about negative 90% of GDP, meaning the rest of the world literally owns us. And going back to Solomon's second question, this is ultimately it illustrated this issue, which is when the rest of the world owns way more of your financial assets than you own of theirs, they get to call the shots. You do something they don't like tariffs, and they just go, okay, fine, we'll dump your bonds, right? And we saw that forced Trump to capitulate because here in America we're so over levered, run such large fiscal deficit, and on and on and on. They literally own you. And on a net basis, if you take the difference between what we own of them, what they own of us, it's about negative 90% of GDP, or about $26 trillion gap between what we
Wait,
own of
but
their financial assets and what they own of ours.
Let me
why
just
does
give
that
some.
matter how much we own of them if they own, I know they own like 20% of us. So if we still own 80%, like I find it hard to believe that the 20% shareholder gets to dictate to the 80% shareholder.
Robert, if you can answer that, but just before
Well,
you,
that
Robert, just before you answer that, can I just quickly give some breaking news? Trump is out and he's making a few statements. So let me just quickly give you those. But just before I do, IUC announced the destruction of an enemy cruise missile of the JASM type in the airspace of Markazi province. Volkswagen are in talks with Israel to convert their factory from a car to missile production. The German government is actively supporting this proposal. Trump on Iran, this is what he had to say, quite a few statements. He said the leaders are all gone, nobody knows who to talk to, but we're actually talking to the right people, and they want to make a deal so badly. Trump says they're having a tremendous success in Iran. So we're having, by the way, a tremendous success, as you know, in Iran. We had one in Venezuela, and now we're having one in Iran. He says Trump on Iran war. He says perfect, amazing thing. He also says Trump on negotiation with Iran. He said we are in negotiation with Iran as it turns out right now. They're doing it along with Marco, JD, and other people. The other side want to make a deal, and who wouldn't? A reporter says, are you going to send Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff to do direct negotiation with Iran? He said, we're in negotiations as it turns out. Now, you've seen what I said yesterday was exactly correct. They're doing it along with Marco and JD. Trump on who is winning the Iran war. He said, if you read the papers, you'd think we're tied. You'd think we're in a tough battle. We're roaming free over Tehran, the city, Tehran, as opposed to Iran. We can do whatever we want. Today, we were going to have the privilege of shutting down a very big electric generation plant. He was asked, what was the turning point to make you want to pursue a ceasefire? A few days ago, you said you wanted to continue bombing Iran. He said the fact that they're talking to us and they're talking sense. Well, the question is, what's changed from America's perspective that is unique now compared to what wasn't in place before? Trump on the USS Abraham Lincoln. He says they shot 100 missiles at the USS Abraham Lincoln, and every single one was knocked down at the sea. So that's Trump speaking about what's happening with the war. Obviously, his press conference is going right now, so I'll probably interrupt again at some point to just give you the latest news on that. But sorry, Robert, back to you.
Yeah, to the point about the NIP, because what we're seeing here. I get a lot of people are worried about the inflation, right, from higher oil, higher inputs, and higher bond yields, higher interest rates are indicating a concern about inflation. But what comes on the other side is going to be severely deflationary. So in a world where capital or wealth deflation means that wealth is being destroyed. Now you can offset, right, to Menko's point, if the rest of the world is, our NIP of negative 90% of GDP means that we are huge debtors to the rest of the world. And again, I've looked, throughout history, I've never found another country in the history of the world that's had a NIP this negative. And it's just a result of decades of accumulated trade deficits. The rest of the world has basically that's how we finance the current account deficit is
Well,
in
and
capital and financial account surplus.
America's the best investment in the world. We've given the best long-term returns of anywhere.
For sure, that was the bargain, right? We'll ship our factories out to the rest of the world. You make the stuff. We'll export dollars to you. You recycle them. You buy our financial assets. We got the freest, most liquid capital markets in the world. We got a strong dollar, and like you mentioned, very good returns in dollar terms. So not only are you getting the best returns in dollar terms, but you're also long the dollar. By definition, if you're in the S&P, you're in US Treasuries, by definition, you're long the dollar. And the dollar generally strengthens. So you made money, you had positive carry there. You made money on both sides. So yeah, that was the bargain. But the end result of that is that you eventually get to a point in time like we are now, where the rest of the world has owned so much more of our financial assets than we own of theirs. April was a perfect illustration of what happens when we do something that they don't like. They just dump US Treasuries. That causes bond yields to go up. If we weren't so highly leveraged, if we weren't so heavily indebted with the debt to GDP, what it is, interest bill, what it is, if all that wasn't true, fiscal deficit at, almost $2 trillion per year, if all that wasn't true, then it wouldn't really be that bad. It would be much more manageable. But the problem is that we are heavily indebted. We do run huge pro-cyclical fiscal deficit and current account deficit. So, could the Fed come in and print trillions to buy, right, to artificially suppress interest rates? Like if we do something that angers the rest of the world, they go, okay, we're going to dump your bonds, bond yields up. Here in America, well, that means higher borrowing cost. Our $1.2 trillion per year interest bill goes up to 1.5, on and on and on. The Fed could very well go, okay, we'll print $1 trillion and buy it back from you. But then you get into a Japan situation.
Well, and the Fed totally manipulated markets before. When COVID happened, everyone expected the stock market to be dumping and do very badly. And it did for 1 to 2 months. And then it went on a rip for the entire remainder of 2020. And it just went crazy. And a lot of money was made. And it's like, well, why did that happen? Why did the US stock market just go crazy? And it came out that the Fed had just bought trillions of dollars worth of US equities and massively pushed the market up. And then they reduced their portfolio later, and the stock market just stagnated for like a year.
Yeah, I have a ton of criticism of central banking, of the Fed. I would argue though that I have been, even before the tariffs, actually one of the few people that was like willing to publicly support the tariffs. I think that rebalancing trade is one of the biggest priorities for America. I think that that is the direction the world is moving. Much less globalism, which I think is good. Did it? The thing with globalism for me as an American is, yeah, look, did it rise or increase the average global person's standard of living? Yes, absolutely. Did it increase the average American's standard of living, right? The median American standard of living? Not so much, right? This is why we see Trump. Trump is just a kind of societal reaction to decades of economic, fiscal, monetary, and trade policy that has not helped the median American, right? You see ever more polarization, ever more populism. That is just a result of decades of policies that didn't really work. Look, did they work great for Wall Street? Absolutely. If you own financial assets, you love running a huge trade deficit. You know why? Because if we run a $1 trillion per year current account deficit, trade deficit, by definition, what that means is $1 trillion per year is getting put into our financial markets. Imagine you're long stocks and you're like, oh, there's a guaranteed $1 trillion bid under my stocks per year. That prospect, that it's been really good for financial asset holders, really good for Wall Street. This is kind of the Dutch disease that America is suffering, dollar Dutch disease. Our
Yeah, by the
financial
way,
industry, finance and financial services has exploded because of this.
yeah, Robert, there's one other thing I wanted you to add to your analysis and consider this, because I asked Grok to do a deep dive. I have the fancy version of Grok, and I asked it to do a deep dive on the supply capacity of every other country in the world that's not affected by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. So you have the demand inelasticity, which you were talking about, but then you also have the question of supply elasticity and how much more can people produce. So I said, how many more barrels per day could all of these other countries out there in the world produce of oil? And what it came up with
Over
was
over what time frame?
over like within 90 days.
Okay.
So it said approximately 3.8 to 4.4 million barrels per day of additional global oil production could be brought online in the short term, so within 90 days, and sustained thereafter. This is mostly from OPEC plus spare capacity, and it went through the details of it. There's 18 different countries, and obviously among these countries are countries like Russia and Kazakhstan, which is why people often say that Russia is a big beneficiary of this, because it has this kind of stuff it could do to benefit from it. But yeah, it says U.S., Canada, Brazil, Guyana, and Norway do not have spare capacity that we're already producing, but there are other countries that do. And I wanted to know if
Yeah,
that is something that would affect your analysis if people started pumping as much as they could, and they could bring approximately 4 million barrels a day on to sort of reduce that gap in supply.
Yeah, no, so it's a good point. I've definitely looked at it. When I talk about the price elasticity for demand, what I'm mainly focused on is the short term, right? Where it's very, very inelastic, meaning in simple English that the price has to go up really, really a lot to get the demand to go down, right? Because you still got to get to work, right? Oil's up 10%, you don't care. You still got to get gas and get in your car, go to work, get groceries, whatever. What that is inelastic demand, but over a longer time frame, it's much more elastic. Meaning that over 6 months, 9 months, I think 90 days would be kind of a little bit too soon, given
Yeah, I
just the
read.
physics
Yeah, I read
of
that
of
like
what.
by a year, you're at more like a 0.3 elasticity if you give
Yep,
people enough time.
absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
I think
So
I think can I
so
just bounce in here though? Like, I think the thing we're not considering is that somewhere between around 30% of all the energy used, okay, is optional. I can turn my ACs down. Okay, restaurants do not have to buy LPG this month. You're going to see demand destruction
Yeah,
I
Gary,
don't
like
think
a lot of people going on vacation and the airlines burning a lot of
they're not going
fuel,
to
that's
go, dude.
definitely going to reduce.
They're not going to go, and the planes aren't going to fly. Okay, because the planes can't. They're going to cancel these flights. You're not going to sell a
They
$300
already are.
ticket and burn
Yeah,
$500
the
gas.
the CEO of United already said that they're going to be planning moving forward for $170 a barrel gasoline, and they're going to be tightening their belts a lot.
Yeah, but they're crazy. Okay, because before that happens, you will have demand destruction. Before you can move the barrels around Russia and get all the logistics sorted, and I do believe there's 20 to 25% energy is trapped behind the pipe. That is before it gets into the grid, into the system. But this is going to come from demand destruction first. And like people in California that, hey, I can't make any money. Dude, you can take your AC and turn it to 76. Like there's a lot of 32%, okay? It is estimated 20 to 40% of every resi is a pure optional. Lighting, computers, HVAC, pool equipment, all of that stuff is purely not necessary. And we proved it in COVID, guys. Y'all said it earlier in the show. Robert's cases. Hey, you had demand destruction. Yeah, exactly. But you also had supply disruption because you couldn't move anything. Everything was shut. But it's the same thing. So only hospitals, military, government stuff, generators. You get 32% offline, and we're back. You know, we just saved 30 million barrels. Now it may not be in the right place, but something's happening because the prices of Oman and the other price point in the Middle East, man, these prices have come down hard, like
Yeah,
30,
and by the way, Gary,
35%.
it's so 66% of the oil use in the US is for transportation, gas, diesel, and jet fuel. 27% is for industrial uses like manufacturing and construction, and 22.8% is residential heating and 2.5% commercial heating and lighting.
Yeah, look,
Okay, so just
I
some
fly
breaking
private.
news.
I can't
So,
imagine getting a jet fuel bill that's 3 times as great as it was just a month ago. Sorry, Sam.
no problem. Sorry. Some breaking news. There are missiles that have been fired towards Tel Aviv. Missiles in the airs of Tel Aviv. I do believe that there has been a number of hits as well. So I'm just checking that out as well. But cluster missiles heading towards Tel Aviv right now. Um, Also, let me just quickly post this out. And I believe a few areas in Tel Aviv have been hit as well, or close to it. I'm just going to give you that information in a couple of seconds. But in the meantime, guys, there is a tweet in the nest. It's also in the YouTube comments. It is a short we put out by Daniel Davis, and it's about the ground invasion. We were speaking about the ground invasion when we started the space, that we believe is probably happening maybe towards the end of this week, or sorry, in the weekend, early next week. So Daniel Davis, Lieutenant Daniel Davis, breaks that down and breaks down the fact that the ground invasion is coming. And he breaks down how it's going to be a disaster. Yeah, he breaks down how it's going to be a disaster, why it's going to fail, and how it's going to fail. So that tweet's in the nest, guys, and it's in the YouTube comments. Make sure you watch it. It's not that long, and make sure you like it and write a comment in the main section. So yeah, do that for me. That would be awesome. Let me Okay, and yeah, let me just give you some more information. Actually, there's more news coming out. I'm kind of being a bit slow here. Bnei Brak has been hit. Bnei Brak has been hit as well. There you can hear a settler speaking about Bnei Brak being hit right now. So Bnei Brak has been hit quite hard. I'm putting the videos out for that. But yeah, just that's the latest news on that. Israel is being hit. How come these guys have got Bnei Brak hit? Let me see. Yeah. So Bnei Brak has been hit. Bnei Brak has been hit. As I'm giving you this news, guys, go to the tweet in the nest. Listen, you don't get the boom boom Tel Aviv. We ain't gonna give you your daily dose of nos or your daily fix unless you don't like this video in the nest. You don't comment on this short in the nest. It's boom boom Tel Aviv, and it is wow. What is this? It looks like it's chaos in Tel Aviv right now. Chaos in in Bnei Brak. That one is chaos in Bnei Brak. So goy ve indeed, goy ve. But yeah, do retweet the retweet the video in the nest. If you're not, you ain't gonna get the news on the breaking news. But yeah, chaos in Tel Aviv. The cluster missiles have headed towards Tel Aviv. There is cluster missiles hitting Tel Aviv right now and Bnei Brak. Let me just give you some more information. What we got? Rockets fell in 5 areas in Tel Aviv. Wow. Some of these images are massive. Yeah, so Robert, were you oh sorry, it was Gary. Gary, you were saying something? I interrupted you.
Yeah, we were just talking about the oil situation. I just given a counterbalance on the demand side. I do think you're going to see a lot of destruction, and rapidly. Um, but what doesn't make
Well, you have
yeah
to. You have to, right?
It's going
totally,
to
bro.
take a lot of cars and trucks off the road.
Yeah, ultimately it's all kind of barrel counting. Like, okay, so Strait of Hormuz, you start there, 20 million barrel reduction, but you can add 3 back in with the pipeline. Well, you got to watch that pipeline because we know Iran has hit Yanbu once before, right? So if Iran hits Yanbu again, takes or the pipeline takes that off, well, you just lost another 3 million. If they hit Fujairah again, which they have in the past week, you take another 0.5 million barrels per day offline, right? So there's a Russian refinery on fire right now that I think is about 600,000 barrels per day taken offline. There's one on the Gulf Coast taken off. Like, it's all going to be a game of supply of oil. This is the physical world colliding with kind of our paper, financialized, derivative driven fake world. Ultimately, it's going to come down to tracking real physical barrels of oil. And not only that, but over a longer run period of time, the ability to actually bring oil out of the ground, which is kind of a separate. I would argue the long run is kind of separate from the
I
short
do
run.
think, Robert, it is a bit weird,
Yeah, but
right? That there's a global oil crisis, and then at the exact time you have the Russian oil refinery hit, you have the one in Texas hit. Like it's extremely strange, right?
It does seem odd, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's something going on, but it's just a bit too much coincidences in a very short period of time.
Way too coincidental. Okay, Valero supplies 54% of a particular distillate in the U.S. This is not. This is very abnormal.
yeah, Robert and Gary, I have been listening to the oil analysis and the financial thing, but which is all fine. My question is about other things which come out of Strait of Hormuz, like the helium, the fertilizers, and the aluminum. How would this impact the global economy? I mean, like, I think 30% of helium comes from Qatar, and lots of aluminum comes from Dubai and Bahrain, because I come from engineering. So I imagine those will cause also disruption of supply chain. I saw so much focus on petroleum, which is fine, but the reason why these are made in these countries is because of the cheap oil there, right? Like, and the availability and no environmental restrictions like in Europe or the US or Canada. But why aren't we talking about other things and how they are going to affect the global economy?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. For me, the straight answer is, I'm trying to watch those, and I would point to like China. They put an export ban on tungsten a couple days ago, and like you mentioned, aluminum, and you were 100% correct. Cheap energy, low environmental regulation. So helium, aluminum. There are all these critical commodities. Again, physical things that you cannot print that are going to be disrupted. And I think it just kind of feeds. It's part of the bigger story, which is that demand in general, economic activity is going to have to fall. And whether that be for things made out of aluminum, I saw a headline that the car makers were stockpiling aluminum, right, because they're worried about shortages of aluminum or higher price. And that's kind of to the point about oil and what we could see in markets where I've talked about like $200 Brent and stuff is factoring in that human emotional panic, right? That the panic, the fear, the stockpiling, the oh my god, whether it you're an individual or a corporation, right? If you're a car maker, you might have the same kind of, there are humans that make decisions at Ford and GM. They're going to be subject to those same kind of feelings of, oh my God, I need to secure this physical commodity before it goes up in price too much, right? And so that becomes a reflexive thing that is hard to understate.
Yeah, but moreover, Robert, the inelasticity which you talked about with aluminum industry, probably some of you know, like the setup time for smelters, like for example, Bahrain shut down like 15% of their smelters. Like, you don't switch, like, if you visited an aluminum smelter, that is a huge operation to restart the smelter. So the inelasticity in petroleum is much, much smaller than in these commodities. So I think the lasting effect on those, we all remember what happened in COVID, right, with physical supply of electronics and so on. I think this is more significant. Like, the petroleum industry is very streamlined, I think, compared to those which are like very dependent on like physical operations where you have to do a lot of preparation before you restart.
Yeah, and there's been decades of underinvestment in, at least here in in America in the West. There's been decades of underinvestment in those kind of physical, in the real world stuff. And we saw this, by the way, not too long ago, about 25 years ago, with the dot-com bubble, right? There was a huge emphasis on kind of the electronic world, the internet world, and we got a stock market bubble and all sorts. But then, for the 10 years, 5 to 10 years after, you had things, the real world kind of stuff, energy, for example, perform quite well. So I think that, we're in for a much sharper correction, in that way. I mean, we just a month ago, it was all, you turn on Bloomberg, I watch like Bloomberg and CNBC all day long. It was just AI, 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 AI. Well, AI is the most energy intensive thing that like I've ever seen, right? The increase of demand to power these data centers is expected to just be like unreasonable, untenable levels. And it's coming at the very moment. And then, immediately after, you get an oil shock or supply shock in the energy markets. It's just kind of comical to me. And I think it'll force kind of a much broader restructuring and reorientation over priority, especially here in countries like the US. And by the way, also, we're seeing the consequence of decades of deindustrialization. We don't even have the industrial capacity here at home to make the interceptors and the munitions. Now, I think the dumb bombs, from what I've gathered, we do have the capacity, but the more complicated ones, the Patriots and those kind of Tomahawks, for example, those are reliant on China, right? So, China, you can call them our adversary, call them a competitor, call them our enemy, but we rely on them for the critical components that go into the very
Hold on.
missiles that we would
So
use
that's
against
very
them.
overstated. There's like some materials that might be used, but no parts, no actual components in these missiles are even allowed to come from China. And it would be a huge scandal if even a minor
Yeah,
part did.
I have to push back. With that. That is not true. Mango has been completely debunked on that from two different sources. Just letting you know.
No, you're not. You're just making that up, Andrew. You know what? If you want to debunk me, you go ahead and you produce the source, but you've never
You've
once
been
produced a
debunked,
source
sir,
against me.
several
You
times.
don't
You
know what you're
pop in and
talking
out of
about.
spaces. Just
No,
being
you don't
honest,
know
sir.
what you're talking about.
Stop it.
You just
Yes,
interrupted
I do.
me
You've been
in
debunked.
order to make a claim that you
No,
have no basis
you,
for.
we'll bring in the receipts again here, Mango. You just wait, come back
Sure.
in,
Yeah,
you jump in
I'll
and
be
out of
waiting
space.
forever
That is
because you've
debunking.
never done it, Andrew. Go ahead.
Just
Just
like
some
day
breaking.
one. Do you want to go
That's
back
go
day
ahead.
one? Let's
No,
do
sorry,
it.
go ahead, Andrew, and then I want to give some breaking news. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yes, let's go back to day one debunking. Mango jumped in when I was explaining about the Straits of Hormuz. He started yelling, interrupting me.
No, I
This
didn't.
man is
No,
spearing
that's a
fear
lie.
and torment. This man is spreading lies. Yeah, we have it recorded, sir. And
Yeah,
every time
then
someone's
timestamp
bringing in
it.
evidence, you
Link it and
completely jump
timestamp it,
in. You
Andrew.
jump in and out with this. No, stop it. I'm going to bring in people here shortly. Don't
Go
leave,
ahead.
Mango. I'm going to bring in the people with the receipts.
Bring them in,
Okay, just
Andrew.
a quick one.
We're all waiting.
Okay, cool. Just some breaking news. As I said, Tel Aviv has been hit, but some more bigger breaking news. Trump and Hegseth are on the podium, and it's weird. They're both basically relaying totally different messages. Trump says, where's it gone? Oh, here we go. So Trump says Iran gave the US a big present, gas and oil related. They give us a good present worth a tremendous amount of money. It arrived today. It was oil and gas related. We are dealing with the right people. I don't know what that means, and we'll have to see what he means, and I think he's blagging it. Trump on Iran war. I think we're going to end it. I can tell you all for sure we have won this war. No, 10 minutes ago, Trump was calling it a military operation. Now he is calling it a war. Hegseth on Iran, he said, never has a modern military been so rapidly and historically obliterated from day one. Hegseth on the Iran war, he said, we negotiate with bombs. Hegseth says Iran is not Iraq or Afghanistan. Trump on his Gulf allies, he says, I think our Gulf allies have been pretty good. The UAE has been hit so hard it got hit by 1,400 rockets. They shot all in the air with our Patriot missiles. So what? They had 2,800 Patriot missiles. That's just ridiculous. Lots of injuries in Bnei Brak. Bnei Brak has been hit hard. Trump says Hegseth does not want the Iran war to be settled. Peaks Hegseth doesn't want it to be settled, he said. Let's read it. Let's see this.
General Kane, I think, the only two people that were quite, disappointed, I don't want to say this, but I have to. I said, Pete and General Kane, I think this thing's going to be settled very soon. Here they go. Oh, that's too bad. Pete didn't want it to be settled. It's these guys are doing a great job. That's a good attitude, though, Tom, right?
So that's him talking about Hegseth. And as I mentioned, Iran is destroying Tel Aviv right now as well. So obviously we'll continue to give you the information as and when we receive it. Let's go to okay. Let's read some of the super chats. It's like the super chats start coming in as soon as Manco is on the space. So at least he gets people to support the space. Mango, stop reading fancy grok and discuss geopolitics without cheating. Try harder. At what point do we kick Mango off for propaganda? Well, I said if you send one BTC, we'll do it, but you all talk. So let's go to David Z. David Z, jump in, give us your thoughts.
Hi, Suleiman. I'm just going to jump in on a note that I just received about 40 minutes ago from our mutual friend, and I'll read it out. I don't need to add anything to it. David, I'm hearing credible inside sources that there will be a special operations raid this weekend. Apparently, it is on either Carg or one of the small islands in the horseshoe bend of the strait. My colleagues and I are just anguishing at the death that is surely awaiting our troops. End of quote. You know who that is from. I don't need to say the name. I don't want to say the name, but it is a significant person that has just issued that to me. I've been in DMs with him today. And we were just talking about other items, but he just heard that 40 minutes ago. So I think we can go with full confidence that everything that Trump is saying to us in relation to a settlement or some form of a ceasefire agreement is absolutely only in his mind and the minds of his two-faced cabinet around him. They are just playing the same game they played before: decoy, 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 and then slap you with a right hook as you're looking the other way. So they're going in, and this is going to be, if you know your old history on warfare, this is the death thrones of a battle of Gallipoli, where many went against a few, and they found out that they should never have set foot on the beaches in Turkey. So here's where we are. It's exactly the same thing. It's pure madness. Maybe they're going to use it as a 9/11 style incident to say, look, we had to go in. They massacred us. We've 1,000 body bags coming back. Are we going to let them get away with it? Let's go full bore in. That's the most likely possible thing. Our mutual friend has also agreed that could be, a reason for this, to send in to slaughter the ones to be slaughtered up front, and then to take revenge in a broad scale engagement. So this is just. It's not even, there's no justification for it in any military doctrine whatsoever. Absolutely none. You're basically sending men over the top against, like World War I, fields of Flanders, against a wall of machine gun fire as they run forward, and 99% of them get eliminated. It is crazy. But they want to war with Iran because they've lost. Everything here is lost. There's of no use. And I was just in a space recently, and I just mentioned something that I was provided. There was an internal memo done by 3 banks in Liechtenstein and Switzerland earlier today, where they've done a summary, a projection of the European market over it's only for internal reason to major investors. My partner is one of them. It was in German, so I had to picture it and take it out of Adobe and put into Google Translate. However, what it basically said is that even if the war, there was one of the paragraphs said, even if the war stopped today, I'm just very much summarizing, that they said it would take 4 to 6 months for the European market to go right. And the caveat on it was they could not even verify those figures because they don't know what is the main infrastructure damage that has already been done in the Middle East. These banks operate for major investors who would be in the pharmaceutical and industrial and heavy industries in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, etc. And seemingly they're throwing their hands up in the air of pure surrender. That there are banks at the moment that are recognizing that their major clients, aka creditors, are going to go into default, which is going to cause a cascade event, even if it stopped today. So I think according to what I was told by Stefan earlier, is that we have reached already the Rubicon. It has been crossed, and these couple of weeks have absolutely done enough damage to cause the European market to stagnate and fail. And that is very worrisome because, as I mentioned to Gary before, and he mentioned it too, there's an intricate web of financial crossover between the European banks and the American banks. Bank of New York, Mellon and Co. in Ireland, immediate member of my family, has worked over several years for Bank of New York, Mellon, Bank of America, and State Street in Ireland, where that person was a major desk trader running hundreds of millions of dollars a day to their own account. And they advised me only very, very recently that, if there's a blip in the market, it will be felt and it will cascade. Here we have it. So those 3 banks today were Clarendon Liu, Julius Baer, and Liechtenstein Landesbank.
So David,
David,
let me ask you a question. So Trump is in his press conference making it look like that there is an agreement in place. He's making it look like, you heard me read out what he said in his press conference, that negotiations are in place. There's an agreement in place. And actually, I'm glad you're here. Obviously, you rate Daniel Davis a lot. We have got a tweet in the nest. We did interview Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis on Saturday. And just on what David is talking about, the ground invasion he's saying is imminent. He thinks it's going to be a disaster, but he believes it's confirmed. As I said, the tweet's in the nest. The link is in the comments. Make sure you put that and spread it far and wide. Let people know what Daniel Davis is saying. He's saying it will be an epic failure. It will be a huge loss of human life, American life, and possibly even Iranian life. But there'll be a lot of lives that are lost. So click on the tweet in the nest or in the comments. Make sure you write a comment on it. Make sure you like it. Let's get this video to go far and wide. But on this, David, that's one perspective. But then Trump on the podium is saying something totally different. He's saying, guess what? Nothing is, everything's agreed upon. The war's about to end. Pete Hegseth's not happy, but the war's about to end, he said.
I'm reading all the media platforms on Telegram and also on the news in Russia, and they are completely the opposite. They have done an estimation that basically Trump is buying time, which is the usual nom de guerre that he is doing. This guy is just running a time delay, time out in the fourth quarter in order to garner himself some superiority that simply does not exist. There is no physical way that he can put enough troops in there without being noticed. There's no gathering point that he can do within 1,000 kilometers of Iranian border that the Iranians would not know instantly with the active Chinese and Russian surveillance systems and satellites that they have. And we all know that they can reach them and destroy them. I mean, the Russians have done estimations. There's one channel that has done, they took out a map of Iran. They looked at the weakest points. They look at, can America hit here, blah, blah, blah. There is nothing, absolutely nothing. What you're up against is, if again, it's the Battle of Gallipoli, where, the Australian, New Zealand and other troops arrived on a beach looking up at a wall, something similar to what Normandy happened in the various beaches, except this thing is much more guarded. I mean, it really is a fortress. There is nothing you can do. The only thing that one of them said is that what the Americans would need to do first is to throw a cascade of thermonuclear bombs, small ones, say 5-10 kilotons, in a line of where they're going to invade, in order to neutralize machine gun posts and dugouts and tunnels and everything. And of course, you do that, you're glowing green at night after a day on the beach. So they can't do anything. They can't form, they can't get enough. I mean, this is very, very similar to what we're seeing in Ukraine, where DRG groups, which are reconnaissance groups, advance into a territory of a superior force, and they get annihilated, team, until such time they get bedded down, and then they can move forward. Something very similar to what the Americans were doing in World War II in the Pacific, where they went against superior forces, and they would lose a majority of them while they secured a dugout position, a trench line, a defendable position. This is exactly the same here, that there is no way along that coast that you can touch it. But as that notice that I just received and have voiced, it is very depressing to see that. It's obviously, if you understand what exactly these people are saying, this is not for military superiority in obtaining a position. This is for the sacrifice of these men in order to gain, propaganda, so they can say, "Oh, look, they killed the 500 or 1,000 of us. We have to now go in."
Cannon fodder.
Yeah. I mean, it was done. It's been done for a long time. I mean, if you study any of the old battles from Rome and Alexander, that's exactly what they did. They would sacrifice a notion of men in order to cause a weak spot. And the Russians have used this actually to great effect in Ukraine, where they would advance, show strength, and then fall back under weakness, or what would be seen as being weakness, cause a cauldron, and then send in the artillery and the Katyushas and wipe them out in a cauldron. That is why we have 2 million dead in Ukraine on their side. I know it's something ridiculous, but they seem to fall for it every single time. It's just the mentality of not only the Russians but the Ukrainians, that when they see a weakness, they run into the gates of hell and then they get annihilated. This is what you're looking at here, except as what we said. Remember 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, Suleiman, when that same person said that his associate had been handed the last will and testament of an officer because that officer who was going in believed that this was a suicidal mission. So, I mean, this is... I'm not in favor of the United States or its military-industrial complex, but I always do feel that, you know, these men have a uniform on them in the belief that they are doing right, the white picket fence and under the stars and stripes, but they've been led by the nose since like the late 1950s, since the North Korean War. This has been a lie, and they've dragged men out of their homes, put them into uniforms and sacrificed them in wars far, far away. Muhammad Ali, I think, said it all when he was asked about these brown people have done nothing to me. Why do I have to grab a gun and go over and kill them? So this is just the military-industrial complex doing what it does best, kill people for money and fun, basically. I think the FUN word is more applicable than the money because they are just sick. And I just see a post done by the ACMAT group stating that they now acknowledge that 2,000 children have now been killed or injured in USA's war against Iran. You know, this is, you know, they just don't care. They don't care if it's 2,000, 20,000, 200,000, or indeed 2 million, like what they have done in Ukraine. And like I'm emotional in relation to the Russian thing, but this is just sick. I mean, if they are doing this according to what we've just been told, this is the sacrifice of men. Yes, maybe some of them have a bloodlust. There are men like that in uniform. But judging by what we've seen, you know, the majority of these men are taking orders. They feel that they're doing the right thing, and they've been, you know, they've been sheep-tipped. They've just been brainwashed to believe that they go fight against Iranians 8,000 miles away, that they're somehow protecting the United States. You know, this is with the 19-year-olds that went to Vietnam, for God's sake. My partner in the States was one of them in 1968. He went, Ron, and he said the same thing. He said, these people lied to us. Most of his men, he was a commander, actually, on a naval boat. Andrew, there you go. And he said that, you know, the majority of his men died for nothing, for absolutely nothing. Young boys, 18, 19-year-old. So look, I don't know what more to say on this. It's just absolutely ridiculous. These guys want the decimation of Iran. They can't take it, Suleiman. I mean, they just militarily can't do it. The Russians are saying that it's beyond understanding and that they are still fighting. You know, the Iranians are simply invincible. We know what they have. The Russians know what they have. There's 2,000 Russian technicians there for years. I think Putin came out there 48 hours ago and said, be careful, everyone. We still have our men there in military bases. You're not going to kill them. And I believe that that was said right across on the top diplomatic level. So the Russians know exactly what Iran has. They're in there fixing the system. They know exactly. And what's been rumored is quite substantial. I've given those numbers to our mutual friend, Suleiman, and he was in shock at them. He was in shock at them 3 weeks ago when I told him, and he just told me there yesterday, David, it looks like your numbers are right from what he's gathering as well. They simply can't find them. And it's impossible to believe that any form of attack using conventional means is going to, you know, dilute the threat of Iran. It simply is impossible, you know. But anyhow, I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Suleiman.
What's your thoughts about? So you think Trump is just bluffing? The wars are going to definitely happen. The ground invasion is definitely happening, and you just bluffing right now.
Yeah, 100%. And I can go and get references off of the Telegram accounts, the military analysts, and these guys like are top tier. These guys are top echelon. There's ex-generals on most of these groups, and they're doing analysis on it, because what the Russians are seeing is that if Iran fails, I should say, they have to come in and save the day, because they can't allow Iran to fail. This is the quintessential line that is now coming out of and as I said yesterday, Putin is under immense, arguments, let's just put it that way, within his advisory council, that they must make more active role in a more visual, public, active role in showing that they are backing Iran. I think we saw there yesterday that there were a lot of munitions. Why do you think the Israelis bombed the Russian port, you could call it, on the South Caspian Sea? Because there's shiploads of stuff going in there. They didn't bomb it for nothing. Who else is in the Caspian Sea? Is an enclosed sea. There's Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, and Russia. I mean, what did you think is coming in there? It's all coming from Russia, and this has caused a massive diplomatic shitstorm. Let's just say it that way with Russia at the moment. It's all over the Russian media. And don't do it again, or we're coming after you, is basically what was said today. Lavrov even made a statement on it. So, like, the Russians are very quiet. It's like the old saying, you go up to a cave with a Russian bear in it, like you poke a poke, you get him out. But once you have him out, you can't put him back in again. It's impossible. And this is where we are as well. So the estimation is that Iran can do this at the level it's doing, or even an increased level, for 1 year plus. But I mean, the European economies don't have 1 year. The American economy does not have 1 year. That's it. Thanks, Suleiman.
Appreciate it. I just want to welcome Sarbaz to the stage. Sarbaz, I believe, is in Iran right now. He is a journalist in Iran. So thank you so much for taking your time out to join us, Sarbaz. Sarbaz, give us your thoughts on anything you want to say, and then I have got a few questions for you, including these claims made by Trump.
Yeah, thank you, Suleiman. Related to the ground operation, a few points I want to mention and add. We had a statement by the Iranians Council of Defense. Defense Council was something that was ignited and started after the 12 days war. We had no defense council in Iran before that, so it was something new. And the first day of this war started by the attack on the meeting of the Council of Defense, in which the Iranian Supreme Leader, he himself, was available, and it resulted in killing of several Iranian high authority officials. So they made a statement which was somehow it made some disputes also, because they talked over there about a scenario in case of a ground operation, and the scenario was to use mines all over Persian Gulf in case of a ground operation. So in a scenario of ground operation, Iranians to block the backup for those and logistic for those ground forces that may invade Iranian shores or Iranian islands, what Iran can do is to spread mines all over Persian Gulf, and not only to Strait of Hormuz. Keep in mind that this is something beyond Strait of Hormuz. It's about a whole Gulf that Iran can spread mines over there. And Iran is capable of doing that to block the logistic for the ground forces. And that will result in a possible Iranian superiority on the ground operation to hit those forces who are going to ground, who are going to attack Iran from ground. That's one point. Second point is that, as it was mentioned, even if in a dramatic scenario, U.S. is going to bombard the whole coastline of Iran with like tactical atomic bombs, nuclear weapons, that's also something that cannot stop Iranians from hitting the ground forces, the ground invaders, because Iran is capable of continuing fires on all its coastline from all across Iran. Iran has ground-to-ground missiles with range, with middle range, short range, long range. So Iran can hit whole Strait of Hormuz, whole Persian Gulf, whole coastline of Iran, even from Yazd, even from Semnan, even from Shahrud, even from Qom, even from Tabriz. So even in that case, Iran has that fire to hit the ground invading forces. So that's also something. And for Iranians, let me tell you that the ground invasion, I may say that this is something Iranians are waiting for, actually. We are just at the statement of General Ahmadian from the Defense Council, who said that we are waiting for Americans to come. And for 2 decades, we have been preparing ourselves for an asymmetric war against the invading forces. So Iran has that superiority on ground. Iran has more than 1 million armed forces. Beside that 1 million armed forces, Iran has millions of volunteer forces. All of them are armed. All of them are trained. So Iran has no problem in that perspective. And one thing very politically, which is very important for Iran, because I believe that the posters that Trump made and the comments Trump made yesterday, they were with the intention of breaking Iran from inside and making a sort of instability, political instability inside Iran. Actually, Trump, I believe, tried to activate some hidden cells inside Iran by the posters and by the interview that he did yesterday. And somehow, I may say that he was successful somehow, because I got some signals from here and there from inside Iran that there were some sorts of like, activity, some sorts of commands, some sorts of stances that were somehow welcoming the negotiations. But the point was that these commands were from those who are not in charge, those who are out of the government, those who are out of the armed forces, and they had actually no role inside Iran. So Iranians believe that, generally speaking, the whole running system, ruling system inside Iran, the whole system here inside Iran has one single word. This is not the time for negotiation. We should not negotiate at this point. So this is the agreement of all Iranians at this situation. But in case of any ground operation, Iranians believe that Trump will use its final card. Trump has some cards on the table of this war. So one by one, he's trying to use those cards. Iranians believe that there are just two main cards remain. One is the attack on Iranian infrastructure. Second is a ground invasion. So Iranians believe that they have been capable of neutralizing the threat on their infrastructure by threatening the hit on all the infrastructure of all the Persian Gulf countries at the region. And Iranians believe that they are capable of doing that, and that's why U.S. is not attacking Iranian infrastructures. And the second is the ground invasion. Let Americans test this final card. Let Americans play this final card as well. And this is something Iranians believe, that the mindset of Iranian authority now is like they want to secure Iran for decades. Because always Iranians had, in last 20, 30 years, Iran was being threatened by the option of war on the table of negotiations. Iran was forced to continue the negotiation, the resultless, fruitless negotiations, because Iranians were afraid of war. Now Iran feels that I'm amid the war now. I have paid the price for this war, so let me continue and let me neutralize all the cards that my enemy has on the table. Then Iran believes that that point may be the point where Americans may come in a rational way to the table of negotiations. And Iran, at that point, believes that is capable of imposing its conditions on the Americans.
So, on the ground, what's everyone's perspective in terms of on the ground, how they're feeling, what's their view about this war? You mentioned some bits, but if you can elaborate. And do you guys really think that Iran is negotiating, or do you think Trump is lying?
No, I really believe Trump is lying. Look, there have been always those signals coming from here and there. And based on their posts, they are getting the same signals have been from Americans again, maybe this time via Pakistan. And let me say something about Pakistan, because now we have the Pakistani prime minister who tweeted just tonight, and Trump also reposted that post on X about Pakistan. Pakistan is not an option for possible negotiations for Iranians. Iranians are not okay with Pakistan because of three main reasons I posted just tonight. First of all, because of Pakistani-Saudi relations. And we know that this war is being run by Mohammed bin Salman, one of the main, triggers and, backups for this war against Iran is MBS. He's the one who is pushing Americans to hit Iran hard and hard. And Pakistan has economic, political, strategic, military ties with Saudi Arabia, and they are influenced by Saudi Arabia. We all know that. That's one point. Secondly, uh, the Pakistani domestic policy against the Pakistani people who are supporting Iran in this war has been very bad. We have the reports of the latest meeting of head of the staff of Pakistani armed forces, General Asim Munir, who had a meeting with a high level, mainly speaking, Shia clerks who have influence on the Shia population of the Pakistan. And that meeting was, based on the reports, um, a sort of like a sort of crackdown on the public Pakistanis who are in favor of Iran. And currently speaking, we have protesters across Pakistan against what Asim Munir did, and they are not allowing them to show their support for Iran. So they are crackdowning on actually the Pakistani Shias who are showing their support for the Iran in this unjust aggression against Iran. And thirdly, the personality, the personality of Shahbaz Sharif himself. He himself, as the current prime minister of Pakistan, is highly influenced by Donald Trump. We know that he is the one who was pushing Trump for peace, a Nobel Peace Prize, again and again, several times. So these are the factors. Iranians are believing that Pakistan is not a good mediator in case Iran sometime wants to go for negotiation. So naturally, if you ask me who is the best option for Iranians, as before, Oman is the best option for Iranians in case of a negotiation. So about this round, Iran believes that, and I also believe that Trump is lying. Trump is lying. There is nothing major. If there has been some sort of messagings, there, as before, nothing special has taken place this time. Trump is sending some of his conditions through several mediators, and nothing new has taken place. About the people, I have said this before. There is a public poll recently. I have read the poll. The result is like majority of the Iranians believe that Iran should continue the fight. I think around 70%. We have a number of like 41% of Iranians who have at least once participated in the demonstrations in support of the government, which is a very high number. I'm talking about those who are participating in the demonstrations, not those who are in favor of the government, but those who are taken to the streets. You know, that more than 40%. So the number is really high. This is what I'm getting from the streets also. I mean, when you go to the streets, when you talk to the people, when you talk to the normal people, I do not mean the religious ideology people. I mean the normal Iranians, like the shopkeepers, taxi drivers, those who may be even secular. But there is this understanding that not for the case for the ideology of Islamic Republic of Iran, but for having an end, because Iranians, those like middle-aged Iranians, have lived for 2-3 decades under the shadow of war. So the shadow of war has been on the economy, on their like security, on their normal life, even on their liberty. You know, the point of liberty and democracy and all these factors that Westerns are talking again and again, it's highly related to the security situation of Iran. You know, there are interconnections between these things. So they feel that for once we have to conclude this. So that's why Iranians are ready to continue this war. Keeping in mind that the war has not affected the life of the Iranians yet. I don't know if there is a sort of like attacks on Iranian infrastructure. Like we are yet, having around clock electricity, gas, petrol, everything is okay. There is no shortage, no problem. Everything is working as before. If there were some problems before, the same problems are currently. There is nothing new because of the war. So people of Iran have not faced that also. And that's helping Iranians to resist more. So that's what I'm getting from the streets of Iran as well.
Thanks for that. Guys, I'm being told in the chat by Saad that basically on YouTube, for some reason, they haven't got the pink ring or the purple ring around us, or the red ring, whatever color it is, around us. And so they're massively deboosting and de-boosting the YouTube channel to make sure no one's aware of it. First of all, can people go check that out if that's the case, or maybe it's only with him? And if it is, then make sure you're sharing all the stuff on YouTube. So clearly they don't want people to become aware of it. They don't want people to be aware of the truth or what's going on. So the only way you can do that is by pumping it out. We also do have Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar coming on in 14 minutes as well. So that should be good. So yeah, just on the YouTube, the tweet is in the nest. click on it. And guys, if you're on the YouTube as well, let me know. Is it that there's no pink or red thing around us, or what's the situation? Because I thought you meant to have that when I thought it automatically happens, like on X when the X is purple. That happens. Is it the case or not? Yeah, everyone's saying it is the sabotaging. Okay, so guys, like, listen, we need to make sure that this sabotage doesn't work. They clearly don't want you to know the truth. They clearly do not want you to know the real information and real news. And it's bang out of order that they're not putting the ring around. So if you guys can do me a favor and go to the YouTube channel, I don't know, share it, maybe like the video, comment on it. I don't know what else to do really if they're making sure no one finds out about it. It's kind of annoying. Yeah, everyone's saying it. That's so annoying, bro. Like sometimes only one or two.
Yeah. Yeah, Suli. Yeah, folks, please go in there and just repost it on Twitter and your social media. Just go in there, like, subscribe, of course, and then repost it on your social media.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, this is just annoying. Like, why not just give people a fair shot to get the information out? It's just really annoying. Anyway, let's go to Tom. Tom, jump in.
Hey, how's it going, man? So yeah, I have a couple of questions, but I'm going to limit it to one since we've got a couple of interesting interviews on the way. But if Robert, yeah, Robert, I still see he's up here. The first question I have is for Robert, and the question is, all right, guys, let me go through this. All right, so Robert, you mentioned this. You know, I heard you over the course of the past couple of days mention the dollar Dutch disease, and my question is, can you explain how what's going on in the Middle East is bringing us into this scenario? And based on whatever predictability is actually present in this environment, is there any way to calculate for roughly how long this trend pertaining to the strengthening dollar can be expected to continue? All right, thanks.
Yeah. So dollar Dutch disease was a term that Luke Gromen coined. So all credit to him for the term. Dutch disease refers to a phenomenon named after, obviously, the Netherlands, where you think that the economy is going to boom. You find a new resource. For the Netherlands, it was a huge natural gas field off the coast that they discovered. And it's going to be this great boom, it's going to bring prosperity. But actually, what happens is it ends up hollowing out the other sectors of your economy. And so dollar Dutch disease refers, you could equate it to hyperfinancialization, which was a term that Keynes came up with. And it basically just describes that, finance, financial services, insurance, real estate, all those kinds of industries are going to prosper while we hollow out, for example, the productive industrial sector or mining and materials, right? Those kinds of things. So we've seen, Wall Street, and I'll put it this way, the smartest people in America used to go when my dad was a kid. They would go to work at NASA, to work on the Apollo project. Now they go to work for Jane Street to build a high frequency trading algorithm. So that's dollar Dutch disease. With regard to the dollar strength that we're seeing, I think that it can become a bit of a kind of reflexive feedback loop where more dollar strength leads to more dollar strength, leads to even more dollar strength. This is kind of the dollar milkshake theory that Brent Johnson has laid out years ago. And the reason for that is if oil continues to remain elevated, the effective bill for Europe, the effective bill for Asia goes up that much more, because not only is oil going up in dollar terms, the dollar is strengthening, going up relative to their local currency. So it's a double whammy for them in terms of the actual cost of the bill in euros or in yen or in yuan or whatever it may be. So that's that can lead to that increased burden, that increased a bill for energy could lead to a selling of the $65 trillion of gross financial assets that the rest of the world has accumulated as a result of decades of kind of very structural trade deficit with the rest of the world. The rest of the world has accumulated a huge pile of financial assets that they can sell down to raise dollars. Remember, if you're in Japan or Europe and you own a US Treasury, you're long the dollar. right? That when you sell that US Treasury, you get dollars, and oil's priced in dollars, and you are structurally short dollars in Europe due to the euro dollar system, as well as structurally short energy, which is going up in dollar terms. So it's a double whammy, leads to an increased burden on you. That double whammy, that increased burden leads you to sell US Treasuries that cause upward pressure on rates, downward pressure on the bond itself. And upward pressure on rates means more capital is attracted into the dollar because it's more relatively attractive now with a higher interest rate, higher yield, more strength into the dollar, more burden on Europe, more burden on Asia, and on and on and on and on. So Brent Johnson is who I would look into. You can search YouTube for dollar milkshake theory. There's tons of videos. He kind of pioneered that concept or that framework. And then Dutch disease. I can put a post I did a long time ago in the comments.
Cool, brother. Appreciate it. One really quick follow up, if there's still time, and it's the following question. So, is this dollar milkshake scenario or a significantly increased dollar valuation taking place as a result of the factors that you just explained? Is that something that the big money's interested in, BlackRock, the central banks, etc., or is that counter to the direction they're trying to take things?
No, they like a strong dollar. The strong dollar has benefited Wall Street tremendously. It has benefited the financial asset holders of America massively. So they like a strong dollar. Now they don't want collapse, right? Dollar milkshake theory, might sound like the U.S. is winning, but Brent Johnson always makes a point when he talks about it to point out that no one is really going to be winning in a true dollar milkshake scenario because the reflexive dollar strength is going to be so severe that it'll just kind of lead to systemic chaos in markets. So, in general, though, Wall Street and the big money at the top 1%, in general, they like an overvalued dollar because it leads to these kind of trade imbalances, right? If we have an overvalued dollar, the other way to put that is that when we make stuff, it doesn't make sense financially for the rest of the world to buy it because the currency is too strong, right? Our goods are that much more expensive for them. So you get a larger trade deficit. A larger trade deficit results in more dollar inflows or more recycling into US financial assets, dollar denominated assets. And it's kind of this flywheel effect. I would argue it was starting to go in reverse, just like with the start of Trump. But yeah, this whole kind of oil shock has caused it to revert a little bit back to kind of the old mechanism.
Cool. Thanks.
Appreciate that. I just want to welcome Gary and Thomas onto the stage, and Darkside. Appreciate all of you coming on. Do jump in with whatever you want to say. But Darkside, what's your thoughts on kind of the progress with the financial market?
Yeah, very interesting, right? Look, looks to me like markets are being manipulated towards the best case outcome. And it's really hard for markets to process what the administration is saying versus what the allies are saying versus what the Iranians are saying. So when you have reports of talks that are being successful, and at the same time you have the IRGC saying there's no talks, and you have the Gulf states kind of wavering in between, I think that puts markets in a tough spot. But clearly, the markets are concerned. The bond market, again, today beginning to see yields raise, oil markets lifting a bit. So there's a lot of concern out there. And then, probably most importantly, we have to look at volatility indexes. So, the volatility of bonds, again, on the rise, volatility of the market, the VIX that we were talking about, that's up at 2682. So near 27, 30 is usually considered sort of a panic point. So we're really close to that. Look, I think every piece of news that comes out is going to move markets simply because you've got a lot of fast money that is betting on outcomes. But I think the smart money here is being extremely cautious.
And Thomas, what's your thoughts on what's happening?
Yeah, I agree with Dark. I think there's quite a bit of manipulation in the market. There's quite a bit of normalcy bias that still exists, in my opinion. that manifests in hopium that things are going to get back to normal. Um, but we're into the fourth week here, and we even if things were to go, we're all done. We're, pencils down. It's going to be weeks or months before things get back to normal. But we're not going pencils down now. If anything, it feels like we're having a little bit of escalation. And I just think that the social media and the information is part of the warfare that's being used, and it's being used to adjust financial markets. I don't know how much. I don't know who made all that money on Monday with that tweet from Trump when he said, "Oh, we got a deal." There was no deal. I don't even know what the hell was what it was. It looked like bullshit as soon as he released it, but the markets dropped. Someone placed some big bets. Uh, so you got to look at the information that you're getting is uh, is colored with that commentary. Information is warfare. The financial markets are part of it. Uh, I think if you have a long term thesis, to me, I don't know how we don't see energy prices go up because you have to balance supply and demand, and supply cannot go up from here fast enough to curb the demand. And so I just think that's really the only thing we're going to see is higher prices. I just don't know how rocky it's going to be on the way to get there.
And Gary, what's your thoughts? And okay, Gary might be away. Inevitable China, how's it going?
How's it going? I just came up because I heard the conversation earlier, and that we drifted a little bit, but regarding the rare earth export bans and the significance of that as it pertains to the defense sector in the United States and Israel, by the way. So, but obviously, I didn't want to derail too much, but like, look, it's been pretty interesting. Look, everybody's I think look, Simon made a good point last night, which was that Trump is going to basically wear out the ability for the market to react to his commentary, right? And I think that's going to speed run. But I like what I think it was Thomas who just said earlier, that this is a psychological front, like there's a psychological and sort of social media aspect that is looking to target the enemy. The Iranian reporter that you had on earlier as well said something very similar, that the reason for Trump's commentary, even beyond the actual influence upon the market, is to try to psychologically and rip apart the IRGC from the inside, because that seems to be their terminal goal. As Myron would like to say, anytime he comes on here, it seems like they're going for more regime destruction rather than regime change. And so they're going to perpetuate anything they want, and they do have assets from within. And Russia and China are certainly helping, make sure that there's clarity, right? Like Iran's not going to be walking into this blind. So, there's not they're not alone in this factor at all. But I think that's something that we have to take into account anytime we see any headlines. Even the publications per se, like say Washington Post or I don't know, Newsweek, anything that you see from them, there's a good chance that some of the information that they telegraph is for, they can't, I get they can't hide everything, but some of the information that you see from even some publications has to be assessed with scrutiny, because they are certainly counting on some of the reactions that they've been getting, and it's been working to their advantage. So just wanted to
What,
throw that
what
out
are
there.
the odds? What are the odds that Trump posts that we got a deal? We've been talking to some people and we got something, and it looks like we're going to have a 5 day, all that bullshit, right? That the purpose of doing that was to get someone killed, right? Because if someone's on the other
Yes.
side, they're saying, "Who's talking? Who's cutting this deal?" And then you just create chaos in the palace. So I wouldn't put it past them to do that.
And the names that they list, so there's a specific person, and I think he was like a high level cleric, maybe, or something of that regard, that was list. They put out a certain specific person's name, and he was not in the IRGC, but he was relatively high in the Iranian, I guess, like central government. And that again, that person had to come out and defend himself, and even that was heavily scrutinized. So this is why I think, and the Iranians have a good intelligence apparatus. They understand, for one, that many of their communications are compromised just from a digital standpoint, to begin with, and that internal communications are liable to be intercepted by, obviously their opponents. So I think that they're not going to jump the gun too much. But to your point, who put that person's name out? They put this person's name out. Well, it was a news station. I don't remember who, but it was like I think it was Israel Channel 12. I actually think that's who it was, and look how that resulted. So yeah, it's definitely part of the art of war. I also think that they are manipulating and providing AI videos of Netanyahu. I'm not going to say that every single video of his was AI, and I never thought that he was dead per se, but it was clear that he was, hiding and protecting himself for probably for obvious reasons. He is not safe to this day, and the Iranians do have pretty good cyber capabilities on the other side as well. So, but what they're going to do is they're going to make a situation out of it because they want to manipulate everybody. And Trump and Netanyahu are absolutely like they're on the same page. Whether they answer to a higher group of people or whether they are just simply what you see is what you get in terms of their alignment, they are certainly everything that they say. There is no point in which Israel has contradicted the intent of the United States military whatsoever, and vice versa.
I'd just like
Yeah,
to add that Qatar Energy declared force majeure today on LNG contracts with China, Italy, South Korea, and Belgium. Again, these force majeures are extremely dangerous for the financial markets, especially those with Belgium and Italy and South Korea, for that matter, all members of the Western financial system. So again, keep an eye out for further force majeures as they really do cause chaos in the financial markets.
wait,
Yeah, they
they've
did.
been
Saudi
issued?
Arabia did that yesterday. Oh, sorry about
They've
that.
been,
Go ahead.
oh, yeah, but they've been issued those force majeures? They've already been issued, as in established.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Yeah, Saudi Arabia announced a huge cut yesterday too for oil supply as well, for similar reasons. Although they didn't get it as bad as Qatar, but yeah, we're gonna probably see more of that.
Yeah. Now, to be clear, the force majeure is a cancellation of contracts. So again, imagine you have a contract with somebody, and then you have a contract on the other side to deliver this product, and the one side of the contract cancels on you, but you can't cancel.
I believe that is also to try somehow, some way, trying to get in his deluded mind that he's going to work out a deal when in reality,
Testing. Is it working, guys? Let me know.
I think it's clear he's desperately looking for an exit ramp. The problem is he's on a freeway with no exit ramp. So it's going to be very ugly and very painful here soon. I still am praying that at the last minute, the generals involved will not allow him, will revolt. When I say revolt, will say that's unlawful. We're not going to do that. However, it's looking more and more every day, which I would
Don't hit on the suit in the game.
Isn't happening.
Okay, guy. Yeah, thanks for that, guys. We have got this interview with Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar. So I'm just gonna bring him up. I'm just waiting for his camera's off, but he's back. Oh, he's in the wild.
He knows where he feels at home out there.
Okay.
Aguilar's awesome. This is gonna be great.
Yeah. We'll just wait for him to. Just waiting for the colonel to get his. Brilliant.
Ready when you are.
Brilliant. How are you doing? You're out in the wild.
Having a day outside, enjoying the beautiful sunshine.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, let me start this interview. Thanks for taking your time out to join us in such precarious situations. I just want to welcome Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar to the show. Appreciate him taking his time out. He's out in the wild, but he still made time to give us the latest news and information. So we do really appreciate him taking his time out to join us. Thank you so much for taking your time out, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar.
It's always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar, I want to immediately go to the breaking news today. Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth were in a press conference. They made one of two statements. Let's take each one at a time. The first statement they made was that they are completely dominating Iran in this war. They have complete air superiority. They're able to fly over Tehran however they want. They've destroyed Iran's military capability. And Iran is on its knees. What's your thoughts on both of their assessments?
Well, we've heard that before. We're on day 23 going into day 24 through periods of daylight, periods of darkness in Iran. And we've heard this before from both Hegseth and Trump of this air supremacy or this air domination. And we simply we have not achieved that. That is not true. What we do know to be true is that the USS Gerald Ford is no longer in the Persian Gulf, but making its way back to Subic Bay for repairs, which, from what we've learned so far, could take much longer than just a couple weeks, likely a couple years. So we no longer have that aircraft capability in the Persian Gulf. We do not have air supremacy because we know that aircraft, to include the F-35, are susceptible to shoot down, whether it's by pilot error or by Iranian capability. Regardless, simply because an opponent's air force is rendered inoperable does not mean that the opposition or the blue force, our forces, have air supremacy. Air supremacy is when you gain control to where the opponent on the ground has no surface-to-air capability, has no air defense capability. And we know, especially with the shipment of Russia's S-400s and S-500s, which are a surface-to-air missile capability, that we do not have air supremacy. That is a lie. And America is starting to see through the lies that we hear daily from Pete Hegseth.
Pete, one of the other comments Trump made was that Pete Hegseth is gagging to continue this war on. And even if he is more open to negotiations, Pete Hegseth's not happy about that. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it gives you an indication that the president of the United States, as the commander-in-chief, is not a leader, and he is not in control. If he has capitulated control and leadership to the Secretary of Defense, that's concerning. But what I see in this is a classic Donald Trump strategy. This is his exit strategy. For those that say he doesn't have an exit strategy from this war, he does for himself. And that exit strategy is to blame Pete Hegseth, put it all on his shoulders. And we all know that that will just roll down, that will matriculate down to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, to the Central Command commander, Admiral Bradley, and on down the line of military leadership to where Donald Trump will clean his hands of this, Pete Hegseth will clean his hands of this. So what I see of this division of, oh, well, he still wants to fight the war, but I want to have negotiations, it tells me a couple things. One, negotiations aren't happening. Two, that Donald Trump is looking for his exit strategy by putting this on Pete Hegseth. From Donald Trump's first administration, we saw all of these signs, and we shouldn't think that it's not going to happen again.
One of the second component which you just touched upon is this claim made by Trump in the press conference. He is saying unequivocally that Iran is at the negotiation table. They are desperate for negotiations, and the negotiations are happening, and there probably is going to be a deal. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't believe it. I believe at this point, I believe the government representation of Iran more than I believe the president of the United States. He has continued to lie to the American public. And in his comments, he talked about Iran promised to never have a nuclear weapon. Before we started this war, the intelligence community from the United States, our intelligence community, from the Director of National Intelligence to the Director of the Counterterrorism Center, Joe Kent, we know that Iran was not pursuing a nuclear weapon capability, nor were they an imminent threat. So if he's saying that's now the deal on the table, well, that doesn't change the conditions of how we went into this war in the first place. And he also talked about, in a very Trumpian language, a big prize for us at the end of this. He's a child. He does not respect the sanctity of life and the lives that have been lost, not only in the United States, soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines, but also those in Iran and those in the region. He doesn't care about the loss of life because he doesn't sacrifice, nor has he ever. He sees this as some game. Like, I wouldn't even say like the game of Risk, because that requires a high level of intellect. I would say he sees this as like children's Monopoly, and he's taken over the boardwalk and he's taken over Broadway, and now he thinks that he's got a monopoly. The problem is, I don't think he's negotiating with anyone on the other side that actually has a representation of the government in Iran. Maybe, but I am highly skeptical of that based on the lies we've been told throughout this conflict.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, to add to your point is we've just had confirmation that the 82nd Airborne Division has now been, according to the Pentagon, has been deployed into the Middle East with 3,000 soldiers moving there. What's your views and thoughts on that?
True. I live about 8 miles from Fort Bragg, where the 82nd Airborne Division is headquartered. And between 2 nights ago, last night, and this morning, I have seen endless C-17s flying out of here. So, yeah, wow. True. And that tells me that there are no negotiations and that this war is not near a ceasefire or an end. Iran would be stupid to deal with a ceasefire at this point when they have the advantage. Therefore, I don't believe Donald Trump is talking to anybody, nor is Jared Kushner, nor is Steve Witkoff, nor is Marco Rubio. What I would say is that when you see the deployment of the 82nd Airborne Division, here's why that matters. We already know that the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit is on its way from Japan, should be arriving there in the next 2 days, give or take. We know that the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit and the 5th Amphibious Assault Group Marine units have deployed from San Diego, and they're on their way afloat the USS Boxer, which is a amphibious assault ship, and the USS Tripoli, which is a Lightning carrier, a smaller variant of the larger carriers that we see, but also upwards of about 6,000 to 7,000 Marines, depending on what all they're bringing in terms of is it more aircraft or is it more Marine grunts? There's different combinations, but what we know is that these capabilities are for amphibious assault, ship to shore. Think of Iwo Jima. Think of the shores of Tripoli, from the halls of Montezuma. That's what Marines do. So when you consider the deployment of these Marine forces to the Persian Gulf, the timing of that likely to assume an amphibious assault either on if you look at the map, everyone recalls Manab, right? Manab was where the girls' school was bombed in the opening days of this war, on day one of this war. In where Manab is located on kind of the Gulf on the inlet part of the Strait of Hormuz, that would be a strategic location. I could see Marines assaulting that to hold the strait. I could also see utilizing preparatory fires, Tomahawks, artillery, Apaches, which we have, gunships, A-10 Warthogs, which we have, to prepare the environment for a flotilla assault through the pass onto Karag Island, which would be extremely deadly, extremely costly, and like I've said before, we might get in, but they'll never get out. Then, considering the 82nd Airborne. The 82nd Airborne Division is the United States military's immediate response force. It's called the IRF, or the IRF, the Immediate Response Force. They deploy within 18 hours, they go ready to go, and they specialize, as their title would assume, the 82nd Airborne Division. They jump from airplanes and they conduct what's called a vertical envelopment. When you jump out of planes, like if everyone's seen Band of Brothers, Normandy, 101st Easy Company, that would be an airborne operation, a vertical envelopment. That would be incredibly deadly. Aircraft will get shot out of the sky because in order to do an airborne operation, an airborne drop, the lowest you can go, the lowest you can bring that aircraft to open the parachute, meaning you're not splatting soldiers onto the ground, is 800 feet. So at 800 feet, every aircraft is susceptible to anti-aircraft fire, missiles, rockets, everything that Iran has in their disposal. Think again, D-Day. Iwo Jima and D-Day come together. The deaths will be monumental, in the thousands, of not only soldiers from the 82nd Airborne, but also Marines on Karag Island. And every soldier and every Marine that is not killed will be captured. That's what we're facing. That's the challenge of Karag Island. That's the challenge of the terrain in Iran that this administration did not plan for.
Well, this is actually another question I wanted to ask you, because they have a few different options. One is Karg Island, as per what you mentioned. The other one is the island off the Gulf of Oman. The other, many people are speculating, is the Hormuz Islands. And some are saying maybe even a land invasion through certain areas, which, you know, I think is a little bit more difficult. So what's, from your perspective, what do you think the game plan is going to be?
Well, military planners always offer to the mission commander courses of action. So I could see a course of action where you mass force through speed and violence of action to a point on the strait, dominate the strait, then bring in more forces, which would obviously be slower to get to Karag Island. I could see that as an option. I could see the option of hitting at multiple points. For example, Marine amphibious groups hitting islands in the Strait of Hormuz while the 82nd Airborne conducts a vertical envelopment onto Karag Island. That's certainly a potential, because if you look at where Karag Island is in the northern Persian Gulf, you have Kuwait, pretty much a direct shot. That would be a perfect airborne operation shot from Kuwait, where we have forces or could deploy forces over Karag Island. So I could see a combination of amphibious assault, vertical envelopment, taking key positions or key terrain, as we would say in military parlance, and then holding that terrain for a land assault. Taking Karag Island and taking the islands of the Strait of Hormuz do nothing if you don't then take the mainland, because Iran will then still have the capability to affect fires and effects onto Karag Island and onto the islands of the Strait of Hormuz. So to put soldiers and Marines on those islands without a plan to either do something, take it for what? We saw this in the island hopping campaign of World War II, through the Marshall Islands, through the Solomon Islands, up the island chain to mainland Japan, Okinawa. You're moving towards an objective. So if the objective is then mainland Iran, we're in a very bad position to do that. Even if we succeed in taking Karag and the islands within the Hormuz Strait, we're going to lose a lot of soldiers and Marines.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. But I guess the main question I'm asking is, if you were, obviously you're against all of this because you think it's all a folly. But that being said, if one was to assume that you were in the minds of these imprudent people, out of the various possible options, which option do you think would be the most likely?
Based on what I know, again, because I am not involved in these plans and I don't want to take away from the expertise of the actual military planners. Military planning is very in-depth. There's a lot of things that go into it, logistics, all kinds of things. But knowing what I know, based on the fact that the fort is gone, we're going to have smaller craft such as the USS Tripoli. We're going to have the USS Boxer. Those are quicker ships. They're fast. So you got some relatively fast movers. What I would plan and what I would likely recommend to the commander, again, for the commander to decide, would be a combination of simultaneous of amphibious assaults onto these islands, hold that key terrain. Because in this, if I'm looking at it from a geographical standpoint, the Strait of Hormuz is the key terrain for this phase of the operation. So seize the islands around the Strait of Hormuz, also take Karag Island as a strong point to either serve as a feint operation, meaning you pull resources away from the enemy. But again, that's what I would do based on what I know. I would do a simultaneous assault of the islands with a vertical envelopment of Karag Island, or switch the two depending on aircraft availability, depending on the air defenses. I don't know the layout of the Iranian air defenses. We know they have them. But I would recommend to the commander a simultaneous vertical envelopment, amphibious assault with quite a bit of preparatory fires, Tomahawk missiles, bombs from F-35s, F-22s, the like. When I say prep the environment or prep the objective, before you put troops on the ground, you often prepare the objective with fires, meaning artillery, bombs, air-to-ground munitions, etc. That's what I would do. But again, even in recommending that, course of action 1, massing of forces. Course of action 2, a hybrid assault airborne. Option number 3, go all in to Karag and then to the coastline of Iran with a ground assault across the border of Iraq into Iran. All of those would have a measurable loss of life, And we learn this in military planning, that if you're on the defense, you always want to plan for a 1 to 3. If you're on the offense, you always plan in a 3 to 1, knowing that you're going to lose upwards of half or more of the assaulting force, because the offense is very deadly. It's costly to the offensive force. So regardless of those 3 courses of action, we will see significant loss of life.
No doubt. Now, in terms of, and I vehemently agree with you, and this is the biggest concern we have. So, just coming back to the military tactics, and you've laid it out quite brilliantly in terms of what you're expecting. You mentioned that even from where you are, there are some units that are leaving there. How long will it take for all of these different units to arrive? I'm aware, for example, that the MEU units will arrive sometime this weekend, but what about the rest of them?
Well, I know the Marine Expeditionary Unit. I know that they're being tracked on open source. I know that there's people out there in the World Wide Web that have the ability. They're tracked, like it's open intelligence. You can see it. So I haven't been really tracking that, but I would assume since from when they left, probably in the next couple days. The 82nd Airborne Division, a C-17 flight out of North Carolina into Germany, you can do that overnight. Period of darkness, land. You could even refuel in air and keep flying. So it all depends on where they're going to stage from. Different staging areas. It's hard to understand what the staging areas would be now, as opposed to when I was involved in planning operations such as this, when we planned for the withdrawal from Afghanistan, when we planned for putting more troops into Syria. I don't know the condition of Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. That would be a potential. Kuwait would be potential. It all depends on where the staging is going to be. So you have a staging base, and then you have your, depending on what the objective is going to be. But this can happen relatively quickly. And if we see what the administration has done time and time and time again, because they're using this war as a way to manipulate the market, we would anticipate that if we're going to do something like this that would shock the world, it's probably going to be on a Friday night or a Saturday morning.
That makes
Venezuela, the first strikes that we did in this war, it's always on a Friday night or a Saturday morning when the markets are closed.
I agree, and that makes so much sense. And in terms of the staging area, this is actually what I was thinking about. I was thinking, where could the staging area be? And I'm with you. I think it's only the Gulf regions, possibly, even in what you said, in addition to that, possibly Saudi Arabia. And that leaves those countries in a bit of a quandary, because they've been trying to play this whole game of, like, we're not really involved, but we are involved, but we know they're involved. But they have been playing the game, and it has worked on a large amount of the public. If they were to allow the United States of America to use their country as a staging area, that would be effectively them demonstrating that they are offensively in the war as well. And so where does that leave them?
Well, even from the beginning, when the United States was utilizing bases in Gulf Coast countries to fire munitions or use radar, that makes by international law, by the laws of armed conflict and the laws of land warfare, those are legitimate military targets. So now, if you have a Gulf Coast country that is serving as the assault force for a vertical envelopment airborne operation or an amphibious assault, well, that certainly makes them directly legitimate military targets. Consider, when the United States and the Allies invaded Normandy from the coasts of England, from the coast of the United Kingdom, that we launched from there. That was, in World War II, would have been a legitimate target for the Germans, which is why we protected it so much. So there's so many options based on U.S. technology and U.S. capability with C-17s, and other type of aircraft that can be used. The options are wide open in terms of what assets remain in the region. Like if you were going to use Crete, you'd probably need a refuel en route, so you'd have to bring in tankers. Again, we know the tankers are not faring well when it comes to being in the air or on the ground in the region. We've lost 6 of them already. The KC-135 and 130 tanker is a significant strategic asset, and we've already lost 6. So I don't think a refuel in the air with troops on board would be a suitable option. Not impossible, but I wouldn't plan that. So yeah, it would likely come from a GCC nation that's close.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. Highly likely. And coming back to the specific, one of the things that you mentioned about the airborne and coming in airborne, doing a multifaceted mode by which they penetrate Kharg Island. I understand that, but the problem you have with the airborne, I want to hear your thoughts on this, is just the sheer volume of airborne, basically helicopters you're going to have to use, or different assets you're going to have to use just to get the people in there, because largely they don't accommodate a huge number of people.
That is a great assessment. You could be an excellent military planner in terms of contingency plans and being the devil's advocate. That has to be on the minds of the planners, because if you were to do an air assault includes helicopters. You load up onto the helicopter, you fly in, you land, you get off. That's an air assault. That's highly susceptible to anti-aircraft fire because helicopters fly much lower and they're going to have to land. That opens up a whole quandary of defensive measures that Iran could employ. Then you have airborne operations. Those are when you have a C-130 or a C-17 flying over and troopers jump out, static line airborne, poof, you jump out, your chute opens up. Looking at Kharg Island, could it be done either air assault or airborne? It could be, but it would have to be done in chocks and phases. So you're not going to get the entire force on at one time. It's going to come in phases. And that always leads susceptibility to the assault force. Case in point, we used that in Normandy because we could mass forces. We never used it in the Pacific because we couldn't have gotten all of the forces onto a certain island all at one time to mass forces. So if we use the airborne combination, again, air assault, helicopters would be incredibly costly. We would lose so much more than we would even lose in an airborne operation. But an airborne operation is pretty scary too, because when a C-17 or a C-130 is flying in and troops are jumping out, and then it has to turn to go back, boom, that any military planner wearing their red hat or their opponent hat to war game this would look at that. But the concerning part is that we have Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, Dan Kane, Admiral Bradley, or excuse me, Cooper. They're all Navy men, Air Force men. They don't have the military experience to plan operations such as this, to understand the contingencies, the risks, and the dangers. And we know most people would say, oh, well, they're not planning it themselves. But we know from going back to the beginning of this war, because Donald Trump told us that the only people involved in this plan were him, Pete Hegseth, the chairman, Steve Miller, and Admiral Cooper. So if these are the 5 guys planning this operation, I'm in fear for my fellow airborne soldiers and Marines. This is a suicide mission.
One other question on that specific attempt that could be made is, can these aircrafts be escorted by American fighter jets in order to protect them at such low altitudes?
They certainly would. They most certainly would be. Of course, yes, they most certainly would be. Again, this is where the calculus of the battlefield comes in. That when you're employing troops in an airborne operation, and then the aircraft slows down to a certain knot speed, because you can't put soldiers out beyond a certain amount of knots, not because of safety, but it'll kill them. It'll literally kill them. So you have to bring the aircraft down to a certain speed. Therefore, your escort fighter jets, whether those are 22s or 35s, have to slow down to maintain escort. It opens up a whole quandary of targets. It's what in the military we would say presents a target-rich environment for air defense artillery, anti-aircraft, missiles, And then remember, while you're doing this, don't doubt for a second that Iran does not have every grid on Karag Island laid out for artillery or fire missions. They're going to get it coming in, they're going to get it on landing, and they're going to get it while they're there. Not to mention, what are we doing it for? If I were Iran, knowing that we want to take Karag Island in order to chokehold the petroleum, well, then I just bomb the island into oblivion and let the petroleum fires kill everybody.
And that's what I'm being told is actually Iran's plan from our own sources in Iran. Then they're
basically what I would do.
Yeah, that's what apparently the plan is. Basically, if the Karg Island was to be taken, they would just bomb it. And the reasoning is that because the Americans are taking it because they think that they can use it as a negotiation tool to open the strait, and obviously Iran can't have the strait open, so they would take that risk, although it would set them back many years, and so after that they would then vehemently attack the GCC. And so that's what I guess the next question is, because if the United States of America takes Karg Island, Iran bombs Karg Island, destroys their own oil capability, reduces their own oil capability by 50-60%. They will then respond and hit the GCC countries very hard. To even take Karg Island is such an escalation of events. What is going on? Why are we here? Why is this even getting to this point? Why isn't it that Trump's just not making a deal?
Iran is thinking about this strategically. Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth have their head in the weeds, and they're thinking about this tactically. 3 levels of war: tactical, operational, and strategic. In the strategic level of war, you're not thinking about just the one operation. You're thinking about response. So let's say American forces take Karag Island to take it as a negotiation tool to choke Iran's petroleum base to make them capitulate. Well, if I'm Iran, I'm already moving oil from there, not there, putting it somewhere else as much as I can, knowing that I'll lose a certain amount to a certain point. There's always loss. But look who my partners are now. Russia, who we just lifted sanctions on. China, who can also get Russian oil. They can live through this. We can't. When Donald Trump says we don't need the Strait of Hormuz, baloney. That's a lie. Of course we need it. So not only for our own production, but because of the petrodollar, of which the dollar is based in. So yeah, we need it. So right now, if you look at from a strategic point, we may achieve a tactical victory in taking Karag Island, but we will meet an operational defeat when Iran destroys it, kills everybody on it, wipes out whatever Marine Expeditionary Battalion or company takes it, makes an embarrassment to the United States, doesn't necessarily impact their overall petroleum production or output. They win. That's the game Iran is playing. We're not even playing. Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth aren't even playing checkers. They're playing like Operation, the game where you go in there and it buzzes when you touch the wrong side. Iran is playing 3D chess. Not even in the same ballpark. Because this operation, Joe Kent said it himself, a man that is in the know. Joe Kent said an operation to take Karag Island or the islands of the Strait of Hormuz would be disastrous. Other military planners, general officers that are retired that have seen this, all have said the same thing. This is a disaster. This is, anybody listening, if you go back and read about Hamburger Hill in Vietnam, we took it and we gave it up, and we took it and we gave it up, and we took it and we gave it up. And the 101st Airborne Division lost thousands of soldiers, and in the end, we didn't even use it, didn't even need it, didn't even take it. It meant nothing by the end. Karag Island will be Donald Trump's Hamburger Hill, and it will cost thousands of lives. Lindsey Graham, maybe yesterday, maybe 2 days ago, not sure which day he said it, but he said, we did Iwo Jima, we can do this. You know how many we lost in Iwo Jima? 7,000 in just the opening days. Are you ready for that, America? Are you ready for 7,000 to 8,000 Marines and soldiers being killed or captured? And when I mean killed, I mean violent death. For what? For what?
For Israel. But just another question I've got for you is Donald Trump as well. He is in a situation where he's in a difficult spot, things are not going well for him in the war, he has options. One is to make a deal. The other one is to escalate. Now, you're obviously holding the position that the chances of making a deal are extremely low. Do you think that he can be convinced of a deal, or do you think it is just the reason Joe Kent resigned, the reason all these units are moving, it's just a done deal? It's gonna. And by the way, my own sources are saying it's confirmed. This is happening it's happening for sure. But what's your thoughts?
I don't. Everything that I'm sharing is just based on my experience, observation, and applicable knowledge. But it seems to be so in all of the circumstances and all of the evidence that we see. If I were Donald Trump right now, I'd be pulling a Richard Nixon. I'd resign and run. Domestically, he has a problem. We have ICE agents in airports. We have a war ongoing where the Department of Defense just came back and asked for an additional $200 billion that's going to put them over $1 trillion in this year's budget. For what? For Israel. And America is starting to tune into that to say, this is all for Israel. Netanyahu, I will not call him Netanyahu. I call him Netanyahu because any Netanyahu you see is AI or a method actor. He is dead. Do not be fooled by this charade. And what we see in the Netanyahu who said this yesterday is that, oh yeah, a ground option, we'll send him in. Have they once talked about the IDF going in? No. America, your sons, daughters, fathers, wives, sisters, brothers, cousins, nephews, and family will die on Karag Island, will die on bases throughout the Middle East, will die in the islands of the Strait of Hormuz, and we'll make memorials, and we'll read books, and we'll write poems, and we'll sing songs, and they're going to die for Israel. Is that what you want? And if you want that, or if you're willing to accept that, carry on. But if you don't want that, we have got to make a point to end this. If I were Donald Trump right now, like I said, I'd be pulling a Nixon and I would be resigning.
Some of the figures that we've got coming out of the United States is that there are claims that there has been I believe about 12 soldiers that have passed. My information let's go with that. The Iranians are claiming it's a lot higher than that. They believe the numbers are in the hundreds. I am hearing the numbers are a lot higher than 12 from my own sources. From your own experience, do you believe that the numbers are higher, or do you think this probably is an accurate reflection of what's happened?
The numbers of dead are much higher than 12. The 6 reservists we lost in Kuwait, and then the 7th, and then, or excuse me, the 5th, and then the 6th, and then I think it's 13 because we lost 6, a 7th, and then the 6th that were in the KC-130 that went down. So 13. I believe that the number of casualties dead is exorbitantly higher. And I think that the number of wounded would scare America to hear the number. Look at the USS Gerald Ford. If you want to believe that that was a laundry fire, I got a bridge to sell you. Many died and were wounded in that. We know that. Look at the other sites that were hit that had soldiers on their bases in Kuwait, in Saudi Arabia, in Jordan. Look at it. I can tell you that the deaths are far. I'll give you this. During the Battle of Baghdad, the Thunder Run, the 3rd Infantry Division, blasting through the Iraqi desert, going into Baghdad, fighting every street and at every inch, we lost 34. And that was considered a miracle. Look at what we've already endured at sea, on land, and in the air. The death toll is much higher than 13. And the wounded would make America sick. And the thing is, it's going to come out. The truth will come out. And when it does, this administration has nowhere to hide and no way to lie because it's going to be known by all. Earlier today, I posted a message direct to Tulsi Gabbard. We need her to resign and make a statement. If she thinks, and I'll say it again, Tulsi, if you think that you can save this administration or that you're going to save lives by staying in your position, you are wrong. You will go down as a war criminal, and I was just taking orders will not suffice in Nuremberg. Step down and resign and join the side of freedom.
What a great statement to make. And look, I do respect you a lot. I think your points are completely accurate. And you come from a very important perspective, which is you served the American military, you served America, and now you are, without a shadow of a doubt, putting America first and realizing that a lot of these wars, especially in the Middle East, are for the foreign nation of Israel and not for America. And Americans, the hard-working Americans, are struggling. I'm in the United States right now, and I rarely meet an American who isn't struggling, is worried about not even paying his bills. I was just in a barbershop and they were like, we're worried we're not going to be able to even afford to keep our shop running. So things are very difficult here. So we really do appreciate the work you're doing.
You know who's not struggling in America?
Who's not?
The people in the Epstein files.
Yeah.
Other than the victims that were mentioned that have received no justice, they're all doing great. America, you're struggling to put food on the table. And I'm telling you, I'm on my way to Washington, D.C. right now. I was just there last week. And this is in the news. Just pay attention. The United States Congress has received from the Pentagon, the Department of Defense, conditions for which to institute a draft. That should scare everybody, because we're going to lose a lot of America's sons and daughters. And it's going to be for nothing, because this president doesn't even have an objective.
Yeah, completely agree with you. And one of the things that you're doing is fighting against this, speaking against this, serving against this, and trying to put America first. And I know you're standing for Congress in North Carolina, I believe. How's your run for Congress going?
It's great. Looking at what came out of the primaries, I know that come November 3rd, 2026, that we can absolutely, and I say we the people, we can win this election. And all politics are local. I'm not saying that, on November 4th, we're going to have sweeping change, or on the 1st of January, when everybody's sworn in, we're going to have sweeping change, but it's got to start somewhere. And if people continue to capitulate to the two-party system and what we have now, I'm not saying get rid of the Democrat Party. I'm not saying get rid of the Republican Party, but let's give America options to balance out the powers that are in power, because we've seen that there's no difference between the two. Between the Democrats and the Republicans, there's no difference. They use some different language. They call things by a different name, but it's all the same. They put Israel first. We need to put people in office that are going to balance that out and make change. Because I'm telling you, a $200 billion surplus going in to support this war. What about the costs of the Gerald Ford that weren't calculated in the budget?
Yeah.
A couple billion more, and then a $1.7 trillion going into next year. The U.S. Treasury has already declared that the United States is insolvent. That means we cannot pay our bills, America. And you think that's going to impact Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio? No. That's going to come home to you. It's going to hit your pocket. And pretty soon, every American is going to be living off a credit card or not being able to pay their bills at all. We don't have to settle for that.
No doubt. Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilera, where can people find you?
www.aguilarforuscongress.com. When you go to that webpage, you can see the priorities: healthcare, education, childcare, living wage, no more endless wars, veterans benefits. I care about veterans benefits. I'm a veteran. I'm 100% totally and permanently disabled. I rely on my VA benefits. So you're darn right I'm going to stand for veterans benefits. But you can also donate. You can volunteer. If you're in the district, you can door knock and help with door-to-door and phone calls. But more importantly, the most important thing that everybody in America can do is awareness. If you don't live in District 13, but you know people in District 13, share with them. If you don't live in District 13 and you know someone that lives close to District 13 that knows someone that lives in District 13, talk to them. We can win this election. We can absolutely win it. Fortune is in our favor, and we can do this.
Thank you so much for taking the time out to join us. We always appreciate you coming on. The audience does love you. And yeah, everyone will definitely check out your website and definitely give you a follow-up. I appreciate you taking the time out, as always.
Well, I always appreciate talking with you, and anytime, and peace be to all, and let's stand firm, let's stand strong.
Appreciate you. That is Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar. Really appreciate him. He was out in the woods giving us his interview, so we appreciate him a lot. Guys, I don't know what's up with the YouTube. So I don't know what to do. Shall I restart the YouTube? Do you think that's gonna help the situation? What do you guys think in the chat? Because the YouTube wasn't even working on the comment thing. I couldn't see the comments. What do you guys think? Give me in the comments. Do you think we should restart the YouTube and see if it works? Because like you said, the thing isn't working, the ring. But that was Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar. We really appreciate him. Really appreciate his knowledge and his thoughts and his perspective. And I don't know, it's very inspiring to hear something like that. And also his perspective. Let me just see what the news is, because people are claiming certain things on the thing. But let me know what you think. Shall I restart the YouTube? Because people are not got the ring around it, so they don't even know like this. Normally when we have a guest on, it kind of goes to like about 1,000 people, and this time it stayed at 650, which is fine. That is the thing, but I think people weren't aware of the thing because of what's happening on YouTube. So I think I am gonna start it. Let me just look at any news. Okay. Let me just quickly see if there's any news. 1 second. Yeah, I will reset. Okay, there's nothing actually. We didn't miss much news. I thought we might have missed something huge because someone was claiming some nonsense on the chat then. Abbas Aragchi says international law is dead. It does not exist. It's driven by Western double standards, which we saw in Gaza and the Ukraine. Okay, yeah, there's not any kind of huge news, obviously, just normal posting stuff. Posted something to shame Tulsi, yeah. I mean, that was a great point he made about Tulsi Gabbard. Okay, give me 2 seconds. I'm going to restart this YouTube and then see if it works. So be ready. The YouTube is going to